Late start. Madam Clerk?
Mayor Truppen,
Here.
Vice Mayor Johnson Sadella, Commissioner Dan Samari, Commissioner William Tudor,
Here.
Commissioner Betsy Wise.
Here.
Okay, we stand for the pledge, please. And if you could remain standing for just a moment after the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you could remain standing for just one moment, please. This month is National Military Month. We had hoped to have somebody here who was going to do a special event, but unfortunately they got tied up. That's what the holdup was, part of it. So I just want to take a moment to thank all of our military for everything that they do, all branches of military for everything they do for our community to keep us safe and to protect our First Amendment rights and our freedom. Thank you very much. Are there any additions, withdrawals, or deletions to the agenda? Manager, I think, and then after that, I'm going to go ahead and before we do that, I think the Attorney Mandel has announcements.
I have two announcements. The first announcement that I want to make is, for the purposes of the record, I just want to make it clear that the Village Commission did go into an executive closed session for the purposes of union contract negotiations, and they have now come out of that session, and I just wanted to make sure that that was announced for the purposes of the record so that it is clear that that session has been closed and we move into our regular session. The second announcement that I wanted to make is I have been, it's been expressed to me that this meeting is being taped. I use tape like, you know, in the old school way, but it is being recorded for the purposes of showing it on a particular app, I think Zoom.
Can't zoom in because the camera couldn't work.
Okay, well, if it's not being anyway videotaped, then I won't make the announcement. But I will say just for the future, it is certainly legitimate and legal for any open village meeting to be video recorded. But in order to assure that all ADA requirements have been met, that is not something the village would be undertaking, nor is it something that would be done on the village's behalf. This has become an issue in many jurisdictions, is compliance with ADA requirements. So I just wanted to make it clear on this record and for a record moving forward that you certainly have the right to video any meeting, but those videos are not being sponsored by or part of the village activity, and therefore we cannot clarify or state that that is in compliance with ADA requirements.
Thank you.
Commissioner Samara, since I'm the one that's doing
Commissioner Samaria, could you speak into your mic, please?
And please ask to be recognized, please. Thank you.
Since I'm the one that's going to be doing it in the future, my intention has always been that I pay the cost and that I am responsible for all of it, and that anything that I need to require as far as the ethics has already been taken care of. The only reason it is not on tonight is because I misplaced the camera.
It's certainly legitimate, and I just want to make that clear for the record so that we can ensure that there's no issues.
And I also went to our attorneys and asked them for advice on it, and that's where I got their advice from it, correct?
Yes, fair. I mean, yes, we're being very consistent in our statement, which is we cannot assure that it is in compliance with any ADA requirements. That being said, it is certainly within the prerogative of any member of the public to video record any meeting that is open to the public.
Okay, thank you. Managers, any addition, withdrawals, or deletions from the agenda?
We have one deletion, item 8C under consent agenda. It's a resolution opposing regulation of vacation rental that I believe just was in the Senate and was not approved.
So it's withdrawn, correct?
Yes, so that's resolved.
Commissioner Samara?
Commissioner Samara, could you please wait, please? Thank you. For the only other additions, withdrawals, and deletions to the agenda, I have one point of order that I'd like to raise, if I may, and then I'll recognize Commissioner Samaria. There's a point of order on ordinance number 2010-5. I'm just doing this in public because we can't talk about this in private. In 2005, there's under subsection, let's see if I can get it. It's page 2. There's a commission meeting agenda that says that we cannot brought forth consideration and expression of interest gain before 6 months again. In other words, you can't bring an item back. One of the items on here is that. So I'm going to ask Commissioner Samari not to do anything about it for this meeting, but in the future just to be cognizant of that. Then that is item 11C under old business. The way around that, Commissioner Samari has just asked for a report from the attorney since there was already direction from this agenda item to have the attorney's draft. Okay, so for 11C, that was just brought back in last meeting. Okay?
It wasn't brought in the last meeting.
Same item, and that's why it's under old business.
It was brought, it was brought in
Okay,
the April meeting. Yeah, to me, this is a very serious thing that we need to have a discussion on.
Okay, but the discussion was last month, and we do have a rules, and that's why I did a point of order. It's every 6 months, okay? And and if you want a reference to the ordinance, it's 2010-05. Thank you, sir. Okay, Commissioner Samara, you had something else?
Well, okay, then I can discuss 11C in my public comments then, right? I can discuss it in my commission public comments.
Sure.
Okay, then that's what I will discuss.
Okay, so we'll move that to public comments and withdraw 11C as currently standing. Thank you, sir.
And the other ones I want is old business. I want update of the cell phones and also the charter section 5.02 election term. I got information. I requested information from the attorney, and they gave me an update, and I just wanted to...
May I suggest once again, the way to do that is to ask it for during the attorney updates, if it's something that was a direction by the commission to go to the attorney updates, rather. We can't bring it up every month because we have a 6-month wait on new items. So might I suggest that way you can get your update to the village attorney during that report?
We could go ahead and give an update during our village attorney report.
And that would satisfy Commissioner Samaria and making sure he got the information he desired?
Yes, we can go ahead and give an update on those items right now.
Okay.
Attorney.
Thank you, sir. Are there anything else?
Madam Mayor, the item 11C is going to be moved to comments of commissioner comment.
Correct, it's going to be under commissioner comments. Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, in the commission comments, there will be no discussion, right? Just my comments, right?
Commissioners can respond, but you can have a statement if you want. Okay. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start with presentations. 5A, we welcome FPL Manager Manners. Would you care to introduce?
Absolutely. FPL has been meeting with some of our residents on the east side. They're looking to underground some of the power lines that are coming in. Currently, they're between the tracks and the houses on 11th Place in that area. They're looking to underground them. They'll be moving them forward, and they wanted to give a presentation just to fill everyone in the village in on what they're doing. And so,
Great, so welcome.
Thanks.
Hi, good evening everyone. My name is Javier Prado and I'm the project manager for FPL Storm Secure Underground Program. Besides me is our manager Enrique Formoso and Arturo Perez, who's the lead customer outreach specialist. We have 2 other team members over there as well. Where's the clicker for the slides?
We don't have a clicker, so
Just
if you
make the
could.
signal. I'll move it.
That's our switch right there.
It's with me.
She's the switch.
Okay. All right, so here we'll discuss a new pilot program that FPL will be undertaking to underground segments of power lines and enhance the reliability of our system throughout your neighborhood. FPL operates 75,000 miles of power lines across our 35 counties in the state. And currently we have about 60% of those overhead and the rest are all underground. So our power lines, we have 2 types of power lines. We have the main power lines, which we call feeders, and those are mostly seen on the roads, and they provide power to an average of 1,500 customers. We also have neighborhood power lines, which those are installed along side streets and within the rear of your homes. These power lines provide an average of power to an average of 40 customers. Both. We have poles that are made of wood and concrete, and the lateral poles on the neighborhood power line are typically wood. Alright, so after 2006, the hurricane season of 2006, we started our feeder hardening program, which is our improving the infrastructure on our main power lines. Since then, we have strengthened over 860 power lines and inspected over 1.2 million poles in our system. Hardening does include everything from overhead to underground, and as of this year, we started our hardening program for our neighborhood power lines, which we call the laterals. What we learned during Hurricane Irma was that the damage was not so much the wind hitting our facilities, but it caused that the wind damaging the trees and knocking them onto our power lines. So typically in a feeder hardening or a main power line hardening effort, we replace the existing power poles. But for our neighborhood program, we want to bury those power lines. We want to go underground and convert everything that's overhead to underground. And as you can see from some of the photos here, the damage was the trees falling onto our power lines and bringing everything down with it. So underground power lines do perform better on an everyday operation, and overall we've seen at least a 50% improvement in the reliability. They do reduce the power interruptions, especially related to vegetation. Underground power lines do not eliminate outages. There are some disadvantages. The main one is the restoration time could be increased due to, it's difficult to repair the power lines and diagnose exactly where the issue is. There's also more risk to flooding, which could delay restoration efforts. So in our program, the Storm Secure Underground program, we're exploring these benefits of underground the power lines within the neighborhoods. It is a pilot program, and we started it this year, and we are willing to work with all of our cities, municipalities, and all the customers to find solutions to our proposal, and we want to work with everyone, especially our customers. So there is a selection criteria. It's all driven by reliability. So those with the worst reliability are being selected first. The selection criteria right now is an outage during Hurricane Irma and or Matthew, at least 9 outages during the last 10 years, and out of those 9 outages, 4 have to be related to vegetation issues. So that's the selection criteria we have right now for selecting these neighborhood power lines. Alright, so we are committed to communicating throughout the span of the project. We have an entire team of outreach specialists that they do go visit the neighborhoods. They do inform every single customer of the project, and we will keep them up to date. If we move forward to construction, you'll receive letters of notice of construction when we plan on starting each segment of construction, including restoration. So to convert everything to underground, we do need to install some pad-mounted transformers, which is the image you see on your left. It is the green box. These replace the existing overhead transformers on the poles, which are the gray cylinders attached to the top of the poles. We may also need to install handholds, with the picture on the right, but that should be at grade. Alright, we are going to convert everything from the main power line, from the neighborhood power line, all the way up to your meter, including the service drop going into your meter can. So the way we do this is we have to install a junction box, which is the box you see on the right of the meter. Well, we're going to bring an underground duct and cable, find the good location to come up against the wall, go into this junction box, and reroute the cable inside your weatherhead pipe into this pipe and connect it to the top of your meter. So that's an example of what I'm discussing right now. So here you see an image of before construction. You see the pole line on the right with the transformer, which is that cylinder. You see the overhead service drop going to the meter. So this is before, and then the next slide is the after. Right, there we go. So now you can see that the pole lines were cut. Everything that belongs to the FPL was eliminated. We do share space on our poles with other utilities, mainly Comcast and AT&T. We cannot force them to come off of our poles, so we have to leave them there, and we will cut the pole, at least the top third of the pole. So everything that belongs to the FPL will be gone, and then the transformer now used to be on the pole, and now you see it there towards the left of the image. And the meter can has been converted to the underground with the meter junction box. So this is some of the equipment we typically use. We will directionally drill, directionally bore, horizontal drilling as much as possible. This is a lot less invasive than trenching. We do not have to open up a trench along your entire property. We bore. There will be an entry pit and an exit pit. The machine gets inserted, it drills underneath the earth, and it pops up on the other end. We attach the ducts and we pull them back, so it's a lot less invasive. And then the image on the right is just the underground cable loaded onto the reel before it gets pulled in underground. So we do try to put everything within easements, and that's what our outreach team has to do. They talk to all the customers, and we are requesting easements to install our facilities. In your area, we have identified, at this moment, we have one project going on. It's an existing overhead system that has almost 1.2 existing miles of overhead power lines. There's 24 existing aerial transformers and 114 customers on this project. The new underground system we're proposing will be less overall transformers. It will be 18 transformers. We'll remove all the aerial facilities, and currently it's going through the outreach phase. So a customer outreach summary. Right now, all 114 properties have been visited. We need a total of 90 easements. The easement forms are being worked on and they'll be available soon. The data here is of last week, so we had 54 verbal agreements, a customer saying yes to it. As of last night, that number is at 61. We have had 16 customers sign off on the meter enclosure box as of last week, and as of last night, we're up to 26, so 10 more customers have signed on already. So here are images of the boundaries of the project I'm referring to. Every green box is a customer on the project we are working on. So the next 4 slides, you could just go through them slowly. You'll see every single property on the project I'm referring to.
About all those houses in the middle.
No. Along, that's 118. The houses in the middle there are on a different circuit, and they are not part of this one. Eventually, maybe we could include that one as well. But right now, we only have one project. Go ahead.
Can we make this available on the website so folks can see it? Yep.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
All right. Any questions?
Commission, are there any questions from the Commission? Commissioner Wise?
Do you have any historical data around the improvement in restoration of service time between the existing status and this underground status? Have you done this program anywhere else? And can you just give us like a hard number? In doing this, we will see a 25% improvement in the time that it takes to come back online after a storm?
Well, the neighborhood power lines are connected to the main power lines. So our restoration efforts always go from, you have to follow the flow of electricity, right? So the main power lines get energized first. The idea with this is your neighborhood power lines are connected to the main power lines. So as soon as that main power line is restored, you should have power right away. This is a new program, so we do not have the data that you're asking about for this specific program.
I mean, I could tell you.
I'm sorry, would you announce your name, please, if you don't mind as well?
Enrique Formoso. So our feeders usually come up during a storm after a hurricane, between 24 to 48 hours, or before then, depending on the damage that we get. By that time, all of our feeders are restored between 24 and 48. That's our goal. So with the underground systems, if there's no water damage, if there's no flooding,
That's the
they
part
will
that
come back up.
that's the part that I was wondering about because
I live in underground, just like that, just explaining. It's overhead feeder in the back, in the front of, and then we got a lateral, and whenever the feeder is restored, I come back up fairly quick. I come up at the same time. So, when it comes to overhead laterals, is with the trees, it takes us days more. Because, when it comes with a tree, then we got to go in the back, clear. So accessibility is a pain during an event like that. So, I could tell you, it'll probably increase the reliability on the laterals 50%. During a storm, it's about 80 to 90% better than our overhead laterals that we have today. And we notice that between Irma and Matthew, that's what we experience.
okay. But there's no real historical data around flooding because you mentioned in your presentation that it can be difficult to access the lines when they're underground, and that can slow restoration. If there's flooding, it can.
Yeah, definitely during flooding, we got to wait until the water comes down. But for the majority of the time, especially during Irma and Matthew, we experienced one neighborhood, and it was probably about 200 customers that we had to leave out for like 5 or 6 days after we energized that main line because of flooding. It was just one in the counties that we worked on.
It has to be severe flooding, catastrophic.
It's got to be where we
Okay.
cannot work.
Is there a, to piggyback on that, is there a, with sea levels rising and so forth and the water table coming up, is there a distance that you put it down, or is it a sealed cable? How does that?
The one thing that we do is we try not to put it where we know it's going to be flooding going on at all times. Like I tell everybody, if the flood level rises, if the sea level rises, we have more problems than electricity. None of us are going to be here. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
because your sewer is going to be contaminated, your water is going to be contaminated.
No.
So
I asked the question because I wasn't sure whether or not I don't know how deep you go with the borings to put it through.
Our minimum is 36 for.
Okay, you're 36 inches. Okay.
36 inches.
All right.
Depending if we're crossing another utility, we got to go deeper than that. Our secondary is usually about 24 or deeper, 24 inches or deeper. So, that's what we do.
Okay. Thank you. Any other further questions, Commission? Commissioner Tudor, anything? Nope.
Do we know a time check? I don't know if you mentioned or not. I apologize if you did. You know
I'm sorry, Commissioner Samara, could you speak in the mic if you don't mind? Thank you.
Commissioner Samara, you might have mentioned it, and if I did, I apologize. Is there a timetable we looking at?
Yeah, so once we complete the outreach process and we obtain all the easements necessary, we will finalize the design, submit for permits if necessary, and then move forward with construction. And this project, there's 114 customers. It is a large project. The outreach can take at least 4 months for a project of this size. And we started about a month and a half ago, approximately.
How is this going to affect our traffic?
Your traffic? For the most part, we're going to be working in the customer's property. That's where we will set up our equipment. If we do have to block any lanes of traffic, we'll work with the Public Works Director and make sure that we get the right permitting and the right MOT, have the flaggers out there, to make sure we keep as consistent of a traffic flow as possible. That's, we'll follow our normal work process. Okay. That we take. And the main reason why we're here is not only to educate you guys, but it's also the public, our customers, because we do want this thing to go on quicker, and we don't want to wait 4 or 5 months to underground and laterals. We want the process to move a little quicker. So anything that can be sent out there, FPL is in the neighborhood, cooperate. I know it's hard to give us an easement for transformers, or the customer doesn't want to put a transformer. We have to put a transformer somewhere, so somebody's going to have to take on that transformer. It's not, we cannot just not put it. So, if the word can get out, we are here, and we're here to stay, hopefully, and work on the ground as much as we can.
Super. Thank you so much for your work. Perhaps you can also work with the manager and the Public Works Director. If we have e-blasts, so we can always send them out when you're in the neighborhood. If you can coordinate with them, that would be helpful for communication to the public.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Normally not, but I don't see why not, just since this is going to impact you. The question is, where's the funding coming from?
Right now, all the funding is already included in all of our bills. as part of our Storm Secure program that we have, so we all pay for it today. This is just an extension. We're going to continue to harden our infrastructure. And if this program is successful, we'll continue for like 20, 25 years until we get all of our neighborhood power lines on the ground. And one thing that you saw with the junction box, there's no cost to the customer. They don't have to pay anything upfront. Like I said, we all pay for it today in our bill.
For the people that have already put their power lines underground, are you guys gonna rebate us?
So what you may have put underground is just your service. From the transformer, the pole, your service point to your meter.
Yes.
We're putting everything underground now. So the entire circuit. So if you have underground service in your house, I assume that the circuit is still overhead. So a tree could fall 3 neighbors' house and you're still going to experience an outage. With this program, we want to put everything on the ground.
I'm sorry, if you don't mind talking to the mic. If you don't mind talking to the mic, so just to be clear, so there's no rebate for people who've already done it, correct?
To answer his question, I mean, why did he do it? I mean, I could tell you, I have underground service, and the reason why I did it was to get trees away from my service overhead wire.
The reason he did was so much to implement an ugly cable in our backyard.
That would have wanted. I would have done it for that reason too.
So no, there is no rebate.
There's no reason.
No.
So where the concern is flooding, where the lines are, we signed off already. We were one of the ones that you guys met with already. I don't know what should be addressing here. And where you're going to be boring is the section of the street that, it's not like a hurricane flood, but every time it rains, there's standing water there for a couple of hours.
Mm-hmm.
Right where you're going to be boring. Is that a concern, or are you talking flooding?
No, that's not. The duct we're going to install is called HDPE, high density polyethylene. It is more reliable than PVC. That's what's going to get bored underneath the ground.
And our cable is in there, so there's no.
Yeah, and the cable's going to go inside.
As the gentleman assured us that our landscaping was not very.
And whatever we touch, we'll fix to your lighting. When I leave the property, we're gonna make sure that we left as good or better than when we got there. Fair enough.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you as well.
Appreciate it. Madam Clerk, I'm going to give you the option.
Can I have his name?
Madam Clerk, I'm going to give you the option. I'm just going to go to the podium and present. No? Okay. We'll let her, this is her proclamation for our clerk. Whereas the Office of Municipal Clerks, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists through the world, and whereas the Office of Municipal Clerk is the oldest and amongst public servants, and whereas the Office of Municipal Clerk provides professional link between the citizens, local government bodies, and agencies of government at other levels, whereas the municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the Office of Municipal Clerk through the participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Trutman, Mayor of the Village of Biscayne Park, recognize the week of May 5th through May 11th as Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our municipal clerks, Roseanne Prada, and to all the municipal clerks for the vital role and services they perform and their exemplary dedication to community they represent. Madam Clerk. We have a presentation by Public Works on traffic calming.
David Hernandez, Public Works Manager. First and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to the Public Safety Advisory Board, as well as the Village Commission, and in particular, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to be in front of all of you to provide information as today's presentation. I would also like to express my deepest appreciation to our City Manager, Mr. Manners, for hiring me and to be in this board and to be in this wonderful team of employees that has put together to try to better the quality of life for the Village of Biscayne Park and the residents. I also want to thank a particular individual, Cesar Hernandez, for all the help and his assistance that he has provided me in the last 5 months of my inception to this village. And I also want to thank him tremendously for all the help he's given me. He makes my job a little bit much easier. In early January, the village manager requested that the Public Works, in conjunction with the police department, explore how to curtail speeders within the village of Biscayne Park. This process entailed entering the potential of incorporating traffic calming devices within the village limits. Public Works was to take the lead on this task and provide recommendations to the Public Safety Advisory Board and the Village Commission as what will be the best suited for the village. The Department of Public Works spearheaded the creation of a pilot program to place speed humps along certain locations on our local streets. This project is to determine what sort of impact this would have to deter speeding drivers and encourage them to slow down. The residents of the commissioners know that the village is very unique in every sense of the word, and this is a community that strives to provide safety for all pedestrians, bicyclists, and drivers. Public Works did a study side by side with our police chief, with a green light from the village manager. Based on this study, we respectfully requesting authorization to implement the speed humps as a pilot program and to allow us to place the proposed humps in a few locations on these local roads that we have chosen as a test pilot. Therefore, the Public Works Department with the Police Department have determined the following as our anticipated plan. Speed humps to be used as traffic calming devices for the use of our pilot program as a way to address the issue with pedestrian safety. The installation of a few more traffic delineators and pavement markers, as well as painting slows on roads that fit within certain criteria, we feel is critical to reducing speeders within the village. Go to the next one. The implementation of speed humps in locations we've determined for certain periods of time, the type of speed humps we plan to install can be relocated to another location and removed altogether without causing any damage to our road surface. Keep in mind that the chosen locations are not permanent locations. These locations are selected while we're conducting the pilot program. Go to the next slide. This is a typical resident that's out there walking the streets. And again, if we see it, residents standing in the median, they have to walk on, obviously, on the paved area. Go to the next slide. And this is typical. Riders, walkers, there's no sidewalks. That's why this is imperative that we move forward on these speed humps to create more safety devices on our roads. Go to the next slide. This is a video that's going to show. No, go to the next one.
Back.
No, the last one. Back up. Can it's not coming out? No? It came out the picture. Caesar, can you? Now go to the next. What I'm trying to show here is this is typical village speedster that drives going 30 to 30 miles an hour on a 25. And this is exactly what our Department of Police has to do. It has to pull over, and that's it. The purpose of this demonstrate is that our police department spends a lot of time pulling over people. I think that with these traffic calming devices, and as we do the regulation and placing in the speed humps, by installing approximately about 300 feet away from some of the stop signs, if needed, they will have gap openings on each of these traffic calming devices. Therefore, we'll have an area so the bikes and the strollers could go through, allowing pedestrians and bikers to go through these areas. This pilot program shall be in place for roughly 6 months. After that, the village deems it to be successful, we shall implement said program village-wide. We will also consult with the county to receive their blessing, which is very important. The few times that we have requested the county for more stop signs in areas that we have deemed to be problematic, they were denied. Just so for the record, the Public Safety Advisory Board has brought 4 locations for stop signs. I concur with the police chief, and with Public Works concurs that there are areas that we need stop signs, yet every time I've sent them the request, the county has denied it. That is why it's imperative that the village takes a proactive approach to the implementation of traffic calming devices for our residents and drivers. We need to take control of our streets. And I want to be clear, there's a lot of conversation back and forth. These are local streets. These are your streets. When there's a pothole, it's your dollars that fix the pothole, nobody else's. When something's going on with that street and there's flooding, it's my responsibility through your tax dollars that I take care of it. So it's our local streets. Once these speed bumps are installed, the village will be responsible for the maintenance and replacement. We're not committed to a particular style of speed bumps that is being presented. There are other styles. However, these are the same styles that Miami Shores has placed at the intersection of 102nd and Northeast 2nd Avenue. And there's other cities like Orlando that have implemented this type of system. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commission? Thank you, sir, very much. I do want to make one comment, if I may. Since 2011, I believe we've been trying to get rid of double poles. I just want to give a shout out and a thank you. I don't know how many are left, but you've been pulling them out, I've noticed, so we're getting them pulled. So thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, but we've yeah, out of the 18, we've already pulled out 15. There's only 3 remaining, and we're just moving forward.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. Commissioner Smery.
Hi. First off, I think this is fantastic and I like it. The only thing I have to ask is, where's the cost? How are we going to?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Smery, do you mind speaking to the mic? Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Smery, I believe we can use CITT funds for this.
That's correct.
So.
Thank you so much. Anybody else? Thank you very much, sir.
Again, I want to thank all of you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
And I also want to shout out to the Public Safety Advisory Board as well. Thank you.
And I want to take a minute just to say thank you to David. You've been a great asset to the village, and we look forward to many, many more years of having you here. Thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you, sir. I'll now turn it over to the, before we go to public comments, I'm going to ask the village attorney to go ahead and read the decorum rules.
I didn't key that.
That's all right.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
You just turned it off.
Oh, I did. I just turned it off. I just want to make this statement for the record as it relates to decorum. All comments must be addressed to the commission as a body and not individuals. Any person making impertinent or slanderous remarks or who become boisterous while addressing the commission shall be barred from further audience before the commission by the presiding officer unless permission to continue or again address the commission is granted by the majority vote of the commission members present. No clapping, applauding, heckling, or verbal outbursts in support or in opposition to a speaker or his or her remarks shall be permitted. No signs, placards shall be allowed in commission chambers. Please mute or otherwise turn off your cell phones and pagers at the start of the meeting. Failure to do so may result in being barred from the meeting. Persons exiting the chamber shall do so quietly. And if it becomes an issue, I'm certainly happy to assist in ensuring these rules are complied with. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record prior to your comments.
Barbara Kuehl, 111th Street. On March 5th, the commission meeting was canceled, and we were told that there wasn't a quorum. And I know Commissioner Samaria and Commissioner Tudor were able to make the meeting, so we all assumed that it was the 3 women on the commission. But then at the last commission meeting, Commissioner Jenny Johnson Sardella said, no, she was able to make the meeting, but she received a call telling her not to come to the meeting, that it was canceled, which means the meeting was canceled even though there was a quorum. And Tracy, you try to shut down Dan from his agenda item, and that's on the agenda.
I appreciate you address the commission as a whole. Thank you.
And I want to make it clear, you do have the quorum rules, and I think it is appropriate to address the commission as a whole.
Great. Okay, I'll address the
individuals.
Well, you know what? There's no way to discuss this without singling out the offending people, because Commissioner Samaria's agenda item last month had to do with addressing the meeting if there wasn't a quorum, tightening up the charter. This agenda item is different. The title is, how and why was the March 5th commission meeting canceled? He wants to know how the meeting was canceled. And I think every other commissioner here, when they heard that Ms. Johnson Sardella was able to make the meeting, but for some reason, even though there was a quorum, the meeting was canceled, I would think every one of you would have said, well, what happened? We would like an answer from the manager, the mayor, the commissioners, anybody who was involved in that. What happened to that meeting? Why was it canceled? It's a charter violation. And if you don't want me singling out people, I can't help it, because these are the people that are involved. And I think Commissioner Samaria's item should be put back on the agenda tonight, because it's a different issue. As far as agenda item 12A by Mayor Trepman, this is an issue about a household sending a lot of emails to the manager and the code officer, and they feel overwhelmed. I can't imagine how you could stop somebody from writing emails. And I would ask, because the manager the mayor took a lot of time from our staff investigating this, which I think is inappropriate and another charter violation. In the charter, it says, the duties of the manager is to direct and supervise the administration of all departments. Commission prohibitions, interference with administration. Commissioners, you're not helping this village by staying quiet. And you need to look into these issues and take a stand and not allow these things to happen.
Thank you.
Time's up.
For the record, no staff time. Thank you. Next.
Amy Raymond, 11520 Northeast 9th Avenue. I have 2 things to talk about, and I have to do them really quickly. So I'm going to do the most important one first. I'm the chairperson of the Public Advisory Art Board, and we are trying to do Mango Fest again this year, because last year it was amazing. We're not promising it's going to be as good as last year, because last year could not be beat. But we'd like to get the fees waived for the rec center. We're thinking June 22nd, which is a Saturday, approximately 2 o'clock. We haven't set the exact time yet. We only have 1 month to do this. And so the Mango Fest is sharing mangoes with our neighbors. We're only inviting Biscayne Park to share because it makes it easier. Sharing fruit and everybody bringing products. Last year we had chutneys and mango cheesecake, and we had smoothies the entire 2 hours. We had 3 hours, but we ran out of food by after 2 hours. Anyway, so that's what we're requesting.
Is there any objection to the commission to waiving the fees?
No.
No.
Fees waived. Awesome. Okay, thanks. Okay, so my philosophy has always been better late than never, and I'd like to publicly thank everybody involved who was involved in the art show of 2019 in February. And I just want to really thank the mayor and commissioners for approving and waiving the fees. To Christian Manners, the manager, who was at all our meetings. He helped us anytime we needed him with anything. He got meetings together with the managers and the chief of police, and he donated all the wine. I want to thank David Hernandez, who really, I couldn't believe it. It was like magical having him here to plan this with us. And Caesar was amazing, and he was more than helpful. He was amazing. Caesar was amazing. And I want to thank Derek, too, who was very, very helpful. And anyway, I want to thank the chief, who went just beyond to make, I've never felt safer in my life than on that day. We had officers everywhere. And I don't know who controlled the parking, but it was great. And I want to thank Dan and Mac, who did a fabulous bang-up job on the kids project. We had 75 to 100 kids came to their project. It made it fun. The energy was beautiful. They donated all of the supplies for that in their time. And I want to thank, almost done, Nancy Davis, who did the signs. She designed the signs. Roxy Ross gave donated all the signs and the printing. And they both volunteered last minute when a board member couldn't come. 2 board members couldn't come. And then I want to just thank the person who won the poster contest. And more than anybody, I want to thank my husband, who should have been first, but I couldn't do it with the mayor and commissioner or manager. But he's the most, I couldn't really do it without him, because he did anything I needed at any time, from the beginning till the end. So thank you, everybody, very much.
And you forgot one person, that is yourself, and and all the board members for all the work that you did. Thank you very much. Thank you, husband, as well.
Good evening. Nicole Susi, 1030 Northeast 120th Street. I'd like to comment on the staff resourcing item 12A. This agenda item appears to be targeting one household. If this commission is going to calculate the amount of hours and time spent from one household, I would like to see a calculation from all households that have sent in emails or have communicated in any form that has costed the village any type of money. This appears to be a personal issue that is being showcased in effort to deflect from other questionable events that have recently transpired. Residents have to send 4,000 emails because Biscayne Park staff does not reply and does not remedy the situations. It takes a few seconds to reply to one email, so the residents don't have to send 5 to 10 follow-up emails. If the code department was fully functioning and optimizing performance, residents would not have to send so many emails and phone calls. If employees are suffering from emotional distress from doing their job, I would advise them to begin looking for another job that's less stressful. Biscayne Park is a government entity. Replying to emails, phone calls, and dealing with angry and nasty residents is the cost of doing business and comes with the job. This is reading as another way to instill fear and silence residents from speaking out against this commission. Public records requests costing $15,000, commissioners threatening harassment suits against residents that speak out against them, and now trying to prohibit freedom of speech. I'd like to know how much time and money it costed for staff and our outsourced IT department to go through and tally up an exact number of how many emails were sent by this one household, because it really sounds like harassment from a city onto a resident. Please allow the city departments to function. It sounds like they need management and coaching to develop their skills in multitasking and time management to perform their jobs better. Thank you.
Gary Kuehl, 111th Street. 13A again. I guess the gist of that is that we have an overperforming code department, and anybody that dare repeatedly criticize it should be excommunicated. I'd like to discuss the portion that deals with the code. The exercise of comparing our reports to Miami Shores or previous commissions is really misleading and pointless. We, for instance, include permit inspections, notices to appear to the Code Compliance Board, etc. And unless you have a point-by-point comparison with previous reports in Miami Shores, it's meaningless to say so many actions, so many actions, so many actions. We currently employ the use of administrative citations. I don't know that Miami Shores does, but previous administrations didn't have that tool, which was a means of streamlining enforcement. That wasn't enacted until 2016. But forget all that, because that's not really the issue. The issue is enforcement. According to the manager's report, all the issues in 2017 were cleaned up by the end of 2017. Since that time, and I'm going to move ahead to the past year. In the past year, there have been approximately 1,400 violations, not actions. This isn't a special event permit. This isn't a notice, a violation. These are specific cases. And there have been 120 administrative citations issued. Of the 1,400 cases, putting aside the administrative citations, only 554 were closed. For instance, at the last board meeting, we had one item that was 6 months after the stipulated compliance date. We had another two that were 20 months after the stipulated compliance date. In other words, you have violations that are outstanding for months. There is no enforcement. It is hardly effective to simply write courtesy notices and notice of violation if there is no follow-up. That's not enforcement. The figures are meaningless to say you have effective enforcement when that's occurring. But the real issue in this is none of that. Why is this being reported by the mayor? Why is the mayor overstepping the village manager? Why is the mayor having meetings with staff, which is a charter violation? Why is the mayor directing staff to provide information to her? If this information was provided by the village manager, it should be reported by the village manager. But you state that you had meetings with staff. That is a charter violation. If all of you continue to allow the mayor to go down this path and the village manager, you're complicit. You're part of this. You're allowing charter violations to occur. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to caution, I know you're very passionate about this item, but I'm asked respectfully to address the commission as a whole.
Chuck Ross, 11166 Griffin Boulevard. First of all, on Barbara Kuehl that brought up about the cancellation of the meeting. The meeting was moved because someone contacted Jenny, which is what she stated at the last meeting. So the first thing we'd like to know is who contacted Jenny. Jenny Jensen Sardello, who's not here tonight. So she can't speak, but I'd like to know who. And the fact is, since Jenny was available, Will was available, Dan was available, we had a quorum. And the word out was there was no quorum. That's why we had to move the meeting. As far as, by the way, also, you mentioned Resolution 2010-5 about repetitive items on the agenda. That item, Resolution 2010-5, deals with when you place items on an agenda. You're supposed to place them at a certain date so the clerk and the staff can work on them. Those are items placed by the commission. Those are not repetitive items. It's incorrect. As far as I have a concern about the process about the FEMA appeal. You can shake your head if you like, look it up. You said Resolution 2010-5.
Please don't direct me. If you want to have public comments, that's fine.
You're the
Please
one
don't
that said
direct
the
me.
resolution. The process of FEMA appeal is a big question mark. Who made the decision to engage Gray Robinson? What was the budget for the appeal? When was the decision made? Why wasn't H2O used? What was H2O going to charge? What happened to the addendum to the H2O contract where the appeal process was going to be added based on the mayor's motion at the February 6, 2018 meeting? You made a motion to add the appeals process to the resolution when we extended the contract. What happened to it? I don't know. And now we have Gray Robinson We don't know how that went and what they're going to cost us to appeal FEMA. As far as item 12A, the item about the household that's sending all the emails, I think you list 4,400 emails. If I read your note correctly, that includes all the CCs. So if you're counting one email with 8 CCs, that's 9 emails. So I think that's distorting it. Besides, if they would answer the emails, they probably wouldn't have follow-up emails. But without knowing what was answered, I can't imagine how you could say how much staff time was put in, because my understanding is a lot of the emails don't go answered. And lastly, someone created a new fee and has imposed unreasonable charges for staff time, in my opinion, to discourage public records requests. We have a new IT fee that has not been approved by a resolution, and more importantly, according to AGO Opinion 2002-37, the fee violates the intent of public records law. Manager did not bring this, excuse me, that's it, I'm done, thank you.
Thank you.
My time's up.
Dan Schneider, 11705 Northeast 11th Place. So I'm here tonight to address Tracy's agenda item 12A.
I'm going to ask again, please address the commission as a whole.
Tracy. I'm saying that it's your agenda item.
I'm asking you to please address the commission as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, I'm here tonight to address agenda item 12A. I don't know who the resident is that, according to Tracy anyway, has cost the village residents $77,000, but I'd like first to remind everyone in attendance of Tracy's last made-up crisis. Remember the month-long crisis?
I'm going to ask again, Mr. Redmond as well.
Absolutely every right. I'm sorry, I keep turning this off. You have every right to talk about the agenda item that's on there, but to continually direct.
I'm giving a little history.
Continuing directing that towards a particular individual on the board.
I'm not
really
directing it to her. I'm using her name. It's about her, not to her.
Okay,
It's to the commission, not to her.
Try and keep it in a more
Yeah, I'll
broad
try.
and general sense so that we don't have
Okay.
a problem.
Let's remember the last made-up crisis. Remember the month-long crisis about the lack of a fire suppression system in the log cabin? A certain commissioner had residents believing that we may not be able to use the log cabin because it lacked fire sprinklers. After several weeks of hand-wringing by concerned residents, somebody finally explained to that commissioner that the log cabin did not require sprinklers and everything was just fine. Problem solved. Well, tonight, we are here to discuss what I can only assume is another made-up crisis. It also seems like a certain commissioner is trying to distract residents from discussing the massive cleanup bill the village is now dealing with because of a knee-jerk response to declare an emergency after Tropical Storm Irma, or the reason why the March 5th commission meeting was canceled because we didn't have a quorum, when in fact we did have a quorum. Again, I don't know who the resident is that this commissioner is singling out, but I'm seeing a trend here. It seems that instead of working on behalf of residents to make the village a better place, two commissioners have decided to silence residents rather than admit to the vacuum of leadership that currently exists in the village under Christian's management.
Once again, please address people by their formal names and be respectful. Thank you.
His name isn't Christian?
His name is Manager Manners, please.
Okay. Two commissioners have decided to silence residents rather than admit to the vacuum of leadership that currently exists in the village under the current manager. Last time, it was a certain commissioner who unilaterally declared Rox Ross an adversary of the village. Really? This time, a certain commissioner is blaming a resident because the manager can't handle his emails. My suggestion to Christian for handling this resident, just stop responding to their emails the way you stopped responding to mine years ago. Again, problem solved. I can only speak from my own experience. I'm a former member of the P&Z board and someone who loves to volunteer at pretty much any event that makes the village a better place. Art in the park, our local art fair, planting the butterfly garden, not to mention that my husband and I pay almost $8,000 in annual property taxes. And for the life of me, I can't get a response from Christian or Christina regarding serious code and safety issues in the village. Most recently, I emailed both of them and copy the commissioners about piles of huge shards of broken glass sitting on the swale at a prominent corner in the village.
I'm sorry, your time is up. Can you
What was
please
the
finish up,
response?
please? Thank you.
Well, if you hadn't interrupted me 5 times, I would have had plenty of time to
Please
finish
finish up,
because
sir.
I
Thank you.
timed it, and it's 3 minutes long, and I will continue.
Please finish up.
I
Thank
never
you.
heard back from Christian or Christina. That was 2 months ago, well over 2 months ago. Similarly, I've requested meetings with Tracy, Christian, and Christina to discuss important code and safety issues a number of times. After receiving no response from any of them, after several attempts, Tracy finally responded that a meeting,
I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to please finish up. I've
wouldn't
asked you
be
now twice.
helpful.
This is the
A
last
meeting
time.
wouldn't
Thank
be
you.
helpful. I
Comments
know
are over. Thank
that
you.
when I emailed the village and received no response, which is the most common outcome, I resend the email several days later. And because I almost never receive any acknowledgement, even after multiple emails, I just assume my emails are going into junk email. I really hope we
Respectfully
don't
asking
find
you
out.
to stop.
I'm
This is
not
now the
going to
third
stop.
time.
This is a 3-minute statement. If you hadn't interrupted me several times, I would have been done.
If
I
you had
will
conducted
finish.
yourself accordingly, we wouldn't have had to interrupt you.
I really hope we don't find out that the resident who is being singled out here has been treated with the same indifference that I've experienced from the village, and that this indifference on the part of Christian and his
Okay.
staff resulted in the village squandering $77,000 worth of taxpayer dollars.
I'm
as
respectfully
Tracy is
asking you to
claiming.
stop again.
If that is
You've
the
been now
case,
warned
which I
3
suspect
times,
it is,
please.
Christian should be fired for
Village
profound
attorney?
mismanagement. And I hate to be a cynic, but I really hope that we don't end up
Okay,
finding
I'm going to
out
ask you to
that
leave
the
the
neighbor being
chambers,
singled out
unfortunately,
here is
because
someone that
you're
Tracy
not
has a personal
responding.
issue with.
Yeah.
If that did turn out to be
Mr.
the
Manager,
case, that Tracy is using her position
sorry.
as mayor to settle a score and silence
Officer?
someone who has criticized her performance as mayor
Officer, could you please
simply
come over
the
here,
way
please?
I am doing right now, well, that would be a serious abuse of power, not to mention a recipe
done.
for a very lucrative lawsuit.
Sergeant Arms, could you please come over and turn off the microphone? Thank you.
Thank you all very much for listening to me.
Madam Mayor, I need to say something, please.
With all due respect, we have a huge agenda tonight.
Yeah, but I think that we have to stop interrupting the residents when they're talking.
Then they need to follow
We have
decorum,
comments
Commissioner
afterwards,
Shimon.
please. We need to stop, listen to the
Okay.
residents.
I would like the opportunity to do that. I am simply asking that when you address, my microphone should be on, when you address the council, try not to address individuals. You can make every comment and every statement that you want. Several of the residents have redirected themselves and shown that they can do that. Let's go ahead and continue to have our public comment in line with the decorum policy. That is why it is here, and it is simply an operation of assuring that these are not specified to particular individuals. This decorum policy is similar to every other decorum policy of every other jurisdiction I have been involved with. And every other jurisdiction, with very rare exception, has had opportunities to deal with it. So you can make your comments go much quicker if you could go ahead and comply with the decorum policy. Thank you.
There's a difference between addressing
Excuse me.
I'm happy to have that conversation with you offline, but let's let this continue. Thank you.
Mr. Raymond.
Okay, try to follow all this. David Raymond, 11520 Northeast 9th Avenue, and I'm going to thank my wife first. So, sounds like she was doing the Oscars before, right? It's like the Oscars, they do the whole thing and then they go, before you go to sleep, kids. Anyway, so I want to thank Amy for all the things she does to help make this place a better place to live, and for all the members of the Art Board and everybody at the Village who helped with that event and with Mango Fest. So, I'm here to talk about the same thing I'm almost always here to talk about, which is our drainage situation on 116th and 9th. For those commissioners that are new, we've been dealing with 9th Avenue between 115th and 116th being flooded out after even a light rain since we've moved in. So for the past 4 years, I've been back and forth, and I don't know what's going on with 4,400 emails, but I can tell you I've probably sent and received over 100 just on this subject, just not counting CCs, just trying to address the drainage outside of our house. So it was budgeted this year to put in new drainage outside. I understand that the bids came back, and I do want to thank David Hernandez because he's extremely responsive, as has Christian been. So I don't think it's a matter of anybody, at least in our case, not responding. It's just a complicated issue. So there was supposed to be a new drainage system put in. I understand the bids came in over budget. So one thing that I would ask that I think has been caused a lot of emails back and forth is just for not just our drain, but all the drains in the village, because it is hurricane season, to put them on a regular cleaning schedule. And this is something that was discussed, 4 years ago, and still every time the drains get plugged up, I still have to send an email. So if there's some way to get those on a regular cleaning schedule, while we're sorting out the other stuff, again, not just for my drain, but for all of them. I would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And I agree with you on that. And if I may indulge for 1 minute, David, if you could just very quickly make sure, because this is a very serious issue for everybody, just to make sure their houses are secured. And David, thank you for your patience. I know you've been
First and
amazing.
foremost, I want to agree with David. He's absolutely right. When I came in quickly, I looked at it. I realized that the system that he has is very old and very antiquated. Okay. What I've gotten is to increase it. I wanted to add 2 new catch basins, French drain. I've gotten 3 quotes. The 3 quotes came in roughly around $40,000. I don't have the money. However, I think it's something that we need to put in the budget, and we do have right now, and I've talked to Caesar and John, we do now go around and we are cleaning the catch basins. He's in a low point. He really does need to improve his drainage, and I would encourage and I would recommend, if possible, if we could add it and to the budget so we could move on, and specifically in that location. Okay.
Thank you very much.
I just want to know that we are. It is.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
I just wanted him to hear it from you. Thank you.
Fred Jonas, 918 119th Street. I really was going to mention some of the other things that other people already talked about. The fact that at least 3 commissioners and the entire village were lied to about the March 5th meeting, and I'm curious who lied to them and why did they do it. I was also going to mention about the public records requests that get blocked and all the emails that don't get responded to. But it occurred to me there's a bigger and underlying problem. And I will tell you, because most of you have no way to know this, since you have no experience and no history with Biscayne Park Commission meetings, this is a very, very unusual commission. This is a very secretive commission. This is the least transparent commission I've ever seen since 2005. I don't know if there was ever one this bad before that, but certainly never since. This commission has basically a bunker mentality. It is essentially at war against the village. I don't know why this commission thinks the village are all the enemy of the commission, but I will tell you that it is your problem. It's the problem of the commission and the staff. I will also tell you, because I'm authorized to tell you this, that some of your neighbors have already referred you all to the County Ethics Commission and the State Attorney General's office. Everyone has had enough of this, enough of the shenanigans, enough of the games, enough of these desperate and pathetic maneuvers that are designed to prevent issues from being on the agenda, or even to say that that recording or videotaping a meeting is somehow a threat to ADA. I mean, I don't know if anybody could even fantasize what that scam is about, but I will tell you that this is not going to stop with a few people complaining to you. I think we're all done with that, and it's moved along.
I would like to comment on the ADA issue. This is not it.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
No.
Maybe I'm not.
Okay, excuse me. I'm going to ask respectfully.
Pretty loud voice, and it's not carrying. The reason I want to go back to that ADA issue, that is truly an issue that came through the attorneys. In very recent times, there has been a complete number of lawsuits that are happening all over the state of Florida against local jurisdictions on this issue. I represent many jurisdictions. Anastasia Papadopoulos, and I hope I didn't totally destroy your name, she deals with this issue on a day-over-day basis. I apologize. I think I did. But in any event, we're bringing that to you as the attorneys representing not just this governmental entity at this time, but other governmental entities. It is the new way to get local governments is to go after them for these ADA violations. It is something that is being brought up in every jurisdiction in the state of Florida. That is the reason I put it on the record, to avoid any potential lawsuit in the future. It was not done, and I think my comments were incredibly clear. You have absolutely every right to video, to record, a meeting. But for the purposes of the record, I wanted to make it clear, just in case someone wanted to go and file a lawsuit, that that is not something sanctioned by, sanction's the wrong term, being brought forward by the village, so that way it doesn't become something owned by the village for the purposes of litigation. So I want to take that issue specifically off the table. That came directly through the attorneys, and it's advice that we're giving all over the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comments?
May I ask a procedural question before I start, Julia? Tracy, may I ask a procedural question before the clock
Yes.
starts? How many times will you allow a resident to interrupt me while I'm speaking before you actually do enforce the decorum rules, or is it a selective enforcement?
Okay, that's not a question, that's a
It
statement.
is a question. That's a very clear question, because every meeting I come here and I start talking, and the same gentleman heckles me, interrupts
And
me,
every time I
and you
tell
allow
that
it.
individual, and you continue to do the same. So you may start your 3 minutes. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Max Donald Kennedy, 11705 Northeast 11th Place. Thanks, Public Works and the Police Department, for the improvements that you're making. I really do appreciate that. A comment about the vision workshop. Betsy did not get or want our opinion. She spoon-fed values to us and asked us to rank
Okay,
them.
I'm
That
gonna-
was not-
I'm gonna ask again.
I am not speaking to Betsy. I'm speaking about Betsy. And Betsy ran the workshop,
Please use
and
the
I'm
word,
discussing
Commissioner
it, and
Wise,
you're
to be
eating up my
respectful.
time on the
Thank you.
clock. Julia, do you want to chime in there? I'm speaking about
That's
Betsy,
Attorney
who ran
Mandel.
the workshop.
Please be respectful.
Is there a law
Have
that
some-
requires me to address people by their first and last names and Mr. and Ms.? I don't know that law. Is there? You're an attorney. Tell me. You're an attorney. Tell me.
Let me
I'm asking. Stop the clock.
read again what it said.
Pause the clock. Hold on. Pause the clock, please. Thank you. Go ahead.
Let me read again what it says. All comments must be addressed to the commission as a body and not individuals.
Did that.
Okay? Then you really, I mean, it's appropriate to use people's titles. Whether or not you want to do that is a personal decision.
Okay. I choose not to do that. Thank you very much. You can start the
All
clock.
that
and
being
let's go.
said, when you address the commission,
Mhm.
you want to talk about an agenda item, you want to talk about an individual as not part of the commission, but something they've done, depending on how you say it, because I've heard it a lot of ways, that's fine. But address the commission as a whole.
I am addressing the commission as a whole, and when I'm going to be directing
Please start the
my
clock.
comments to things that happen. Betsy's meeting was not inclusive. It was patronizing. I demand to know also what happened to the March 5th commission meeting. Someone told Jenny the meeting was canceled. Get to the bottom of that tonight, please. You stalled long enough. Regarding Tracy's agenda item 12A, I'm talking to the commission, not to Tracy. I'm really glad Tracy brought this up. I'm hoping it will lead to a substantive conversation about lack of communication in this village and terrible code enforcement. I trust that you invited the residents in question tonight to tell their side of the story. They're doing something right to get this kind of response. I kind of like their style. Perhaps I could learn something from them. Since this important topic has been floated to the level of commission meeting, I assume our strong mayor already did everything in his considerable power to correct it. Please lay out all the proactive remedies that Christian tried and failed, including email responses and meeting with these residents. If Tracy's coming to his rescue, we need to first see how Christian tried and failed. And we need to address his inability to remedy this himself before it costs the village so much money. He's the man in charge, right? Surely there's a long paper trail that we can look at. During that conversation tonight, please address these topics. How many of the code violations these people reported were legit and not previously documented by the village? How many did you subsequently handle after these residents brought them to your attention? Did you thank these residents? In other words, how much of these residents positively impacted code enforcement? Please break down by topic so we can also see the life safety issues separately. Where else can residents find this information about code citations so they don't need to bother you with these requests? Please cite existing communication guidelines these residents are violating. What is the village's policy on staff responding to residents? I can't find that on our website. If you're considering somehow charging residents for their emails or whatever's going to happen here tonight, consider issuing credits for good ideas and code violations that you weren't aware of, including dangerous things like pools open to the street, refrigerators with doors on them, boats and cars on jacks in front yards. And when you discuss the free speech aspect, remember that Jenny and Will specifically cited their interest in protecting free speech in 2017 when voting against Rox's human rights resolution, which originally came about when a former commissioner was calling our African American neighbors darkies on social media. Protect the complainers tonight as well as the racists. Finally, trying to intimidate residents like Betsy did at a prior meeting and like Tracy's trying to do tonight is juvenile and counterproductive. I'm wrapping it up. I, for one, am not impressed or intimidated by Tracy. I'm really just kind of embarrassed for her and this village
Okay, that's
nearly
enough
every time
because
she opens her mouth.
once again, that's enough.
Mike Redmond, 11804 Northeast 8th Avenue. I really, I've lived here 45 years. I don't think there's very many people in this room who can say that. That's great. That's good to know. It doesn't matter if you've lived here 2 years or 45 or 50. You're the same resident. You have the same rights. You have everything. There's nothing. But what I can say is that, is this who we are? Every week? Every single week? Nothing but complaints? There's nothing we can say about this commission? I voted for every single person on this commission. I campaigned for every single person on this commission. And, I don't see them doing, like the working together thing, like they started out to. But they are getting a lot of good things done. Our code department, I know you hate it. That's, come on. It's been, the record keeping has been updated. Really, it has. I'm a little nervous now because you guys really upset me. Really, all you do.
Excuse me. I'm asking you politely to not call out from the podium.
That's the commission.
He listened to you for 3
These are
minutes. Do the
residents
same.
here.
Pause the clock, please.
That's the commission. These are residents.
Thank you. Whoever it was in the back in the peanut gallery.
Hey, look, my time just went. Anyway, what I'd like to
He's got
say
half
is,
left.
I'll get there.
things are going on that are encouraging in the park, and all you can say every time, just this entire group here, is just about code and this, and we're not code badgers in Biscayne Park, nor will we ever be, and I don't think that's a good start for the park. I mean, is that who we are? Code badgers? I mean, come on, guys. And always picking on the commission with little minutia, this, that. Minutia. It doesn't matter. World will go on.
Thank you, sir.
Guys.
Thank you.
Get a life.
Hi, everybody. First timer here.
Welcome to the party.
Thank you. I've lived here for 10 years. I just wanted to say...
I'm sorry, before you have to speak, say your name and your address, please.
My name is Elizabeth Castillo, and I live at 11389 Northeast 8th Avenue. Don't write that down. I just wanted to say for the record, I thought Betsy did a phenomenal job. That's what I do for a living. I want to speak because I heard somebody insult her, and I absolutely did not feel that she did not speak clearly about figuring out what the culture is for a park like ours. I think that everyone here bought in the park for a certain reason. For me, it was security. I've lived here 10 years and I've never had any crime happen. Thank you, officers, for everything. And I think that it's very important for us to have a culture and for us to have some kind of brand name. I do not feel comfortable with all the negativity in the room. I just came to the last meeting. That was my first meeting. This is my second meeting. And I think that when you deal in large settings like this, it always needs to be positive. If you're always picking apart the negative, we're never going to get anything done. Constructive is always great, but when you're insulting people, you're never going to get a good result.
I'm sorry. Okay, excuse me. Can you pause the clock? For the same reason, don't call it again. For the same reason that, and I appreciate the idea, but for the same reason that they cannot interrupt, the same reason that you cannot. Thank you. You may continue.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Jared Susi, 1030 Northeast 120th Street.
I just wanted to thank our Public Safety Board and our Public Works for putting together the traffic calming and moving forward on some projects. It's definitely visible around the village. Thank you. I wanted to talk about the variance that was postponed from a couple months ago.
I believe that's still, is that variance still pending?
Yeah, it's just...
Since it's a quasi-judicial matter, we really can't talk about it outside
I'll
the
wait.
notice public hearing.
Thank you so much, because then it'll count, Mr. Susi. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dick Rogers. I live at 655 Northeast 118th Street. I stopped coming to these meetings years ago. I've lived in the park since '73. For the same reason I probably won't come to another one. The lack of civility in this room is remarkable. Remarkable. Reminds me of Congress. If you're not happy, do something positive. Don't just whine. I want to tell the commissioners how much I appreciate their ability to endure and still show up for these meetings. And I would like to say to the manager, I think you're doing a great job. As I said, I've lived in this park since 1973. I've seen commissioners openly disdainful of residents asking legitimate questions at meetings. I have not seen that from this group. I think that this is civil government and we should all be civil in this process. If you can't be civil, then you don't belong in a public meeting. All of us don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear the personal attacks, the diatribes. This is about governance. Governance. It's not about whim. And I'm not going to get personal and address individual issues, but I clean up the broken glass in my yard. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Okay, are there any further public comments? Okay, having none, we're going to go ahead and move forward. We have a consent agenda. Is there a motion to...
Or information updates?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I missed a whole section. As always, information updates on FEMA. We have attorneys for that. I believe Attorney Rodriguez is going to come up and give us an update.
Good evening, everyone. Before we get started on these comments, I want to make it very clear that these remain pending appeals, and as such, it is our recommendation that we don't have public discussion over the specifics of the appeals, because we want to make sure that as they move forward as pending I look at these in the nature of pending litigation, as we did follow an appeal process, that we are not adding to a record that has now been set with FEMA. But I think it is appropriate for us to provide an update as to where we are procedurally on those appeals.
Attorney Rodriguez.
Good evening, everyone. So this village suffered from Hurricane Irma in 2017, in September of 2017.
I'm sorry. Yep.
Is this better?
Yep.
In 2017, in September of 2017. The village retained H2O consultants to submit FEMA public assistance cost reimbursement claims. And H2O did that. In mid to late February and early March, the village received FEMA's responses to those claims. And there were 3 partial denials, and I'll go through them. The first was project number 12857, which covered debris removal and debris monitoring costs post-Irma from October 18th to December 16th, 2017. The FEMA program allowed for an 80% cost share reimbursement if the village qualified. The village's claim for that project was $414,000 and change, and FEMA issued a partial denial in the amount of $180,091.91, specifically for the Grubbs contract and the BCP body contract. Unfortunately, in March, H2O Consultants notified the village manager that handling an appeal would be outside the scope of their current contract with the village and their task order, and that a new task order would need to be entered into. With insufficient time, for those who don't know, FEMA appeals have to be filed within 60 days of the decision. The village requested that our firm, as their attorneys, timely submit the appeal so we don't lose the opportunity to contest the partial denial. We did that. For Project 12857 that I was just referring to, the village's appeal was timely submitted to Florida Department of Emergency Management, also known as DEM, on April 16th, 2019. With appendices, the appeal submission totaled 1,556 pages. Florida DEM has 60 days to review our documentation and provide its recommendation
could you
to
repeat
the
that?
state
It
of
was how
Florida.
many pages?
1,556 pages for this
Thank you.
appeal. For this appeal. It's pending with DEM. DEM has 60 days to review the documentation and provide its recommendation to FEMA. Florida DEM's deadline for that appeal is Friday, June 14th. So we won't have an update for the June meeting, but we should have one for July as to what the state weighed in on our pending appeal with FEMA. The next claim is for Project 5511, which was also for debris removal and debris monitoring costs post-IRMA, but it was for a different time period, September 4th, 2017 through September 17th, 2017, and the public assistance cost share reimbursement would have been 75%. The claim amount for that project was $55,160.48. FEMA issued a partial denial in the amount of $28,140.75. Our firm handled that appeal. The village's appeal was timely submitted on April 18th, 2019. With appendices, the appeal submission for that project totaled 1,231 pages. Florida DEM's 60-day window to review and recommend to FEMA expires on Monday, June 17th, 2019. So again, we won't have an update for you for the June meeting, but we should have an update for you as to Florida DEM's decision and recommendation to FEMA for the July meeting. Lastly, and this is the biggest claim, project number 5517, again for debris removal and debris monitoring costs post-IRMA for the time period September 18th, 2017 through October 17th, 2017. FEMA's public assistance cost share reimbursement would be 90% if approved. The village's claim was for $607,352.83. FEMA issued a partial denial of that claim, and the denied amount was $540,000. We timely submitted that appeal on May 2nd, 2019, so last week. With appendices, that appeal, which was the biggest because it was the time period immediately post-IRMA, totaled 3,982 pages. Florida DEM's 60-day window to review and provide a recommendation for FEMA for this claim appeal expires Monday, July 1st, 2019. So for that particular claim appeal, we will not have an update, but we might, early July, latest the August meeting. From there, FEMA reviews the village's claim coupled with the state's recommendation and issues a decision. That's where we are with the appeals.
Thank you. I do have one question. My understanding is, had we not gone with Hendry County, the closest next would have been $1.3 million more. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
When I looked at the Hendry County contract, it was the cheapest contract to go with Grubbs by a $1.3 million, or 1 million, I think it was 1,300,000, something like that.
That's, yes. Well, there were 8 total bids submitted to Hernando County. Grubbs was by far the lowest. And the number you're referring to, the 1.3, that was the difference between the 8th submission, which was Grubbs, and the 7th commission, if you rank them in terms of expensive to cheapest.
So had we...
It was substantially cheaper.
Okay. And the other question I have, in your experience, you had mentioned this before last meeting, but we have a lot more people here than we had last meeting. In your firm's experience, what is going across statewide in terms of the denials from FEMA?
Well, without getting too political, if you Google what disaster funds are being used for these days, they are being tapped into at the federal level for other things. There is a statewide issue with FEMA claims being initially denied on the front end and the appeal process having to take place. We represent a lot of municipalities, and we're seeing that, unfortunately, across the state for Irma claims. Irma was just, it devastated the whole state. It was the size of the state of Florida. So we are seeing FEMA appeals, unfortunately, across the state for Hurricane Irma because of how devastating it was and how much money has been earmarked by the federal government to respond to those claims. And I'll point out, that pot, that disaster relief fund pot, that year, Harvey happened days before Irma, and Maria happened days after Irma. Those were 3 devastating storms that all happened, I think, in like a 20-day period. So there's a lot of FEMA claims being submitted for this time period for 3 horrific disasters, and a lot of them are being rejected. There's just not enough money. So everyone has to appeal. And that's what we've done, and we've timely done it. Oh, and one other item I wanted to mention, we were successful in having all 3 appeals assigned to the same appeal officer at the state level. So we are in communication with one person at the state for all 3. So I think that's helpful because these issues are really the same for different time periods. It's the same 2 contracts across 3 appeals.
And I just wanted to say thank you because the amount of work that you did in such an incredibly short period of time is really miraculous. So thank you so much for all the work that you've done. Okay, consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the balance of the consent?
I make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
No. 8D, the only thing about 8D I want, it doesn't say anything about what the percentage that Biscayne Park gets from this vending machine. I think that should be in there.
We either have to pull it,
Pull it.
then we'll pull it for discussion. Okay, we're going to pull 8D. And if we may, go ahead and put that under 11 for resolution under 10C. Okay, and now is there a motion to approve the balance of the consent minus 8D?
I make a motion to approve.
I second it.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and move to resolution 2019-09. Village Attorney, do you have that in front of you? You want me to read it?
Sorry, I'm going a couple different directions. A resolution of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, establishing the solid waste assessment fee for the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, for the fiscal year beginning.
Excuse me, Mayor. Do we need to go back and look at the general vending one that Commissioner Samaria pulled first?
I put it at 10C. Do you want to move it
Okay.
to 10A? If you want to,
Sorry,
I can. Yeah, I put it at 10C just because it's easy number.
Okay. Sorry.
Continue.
I'm going to start it. A resolution of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, establishing the solid waste assessment fee for the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2019, providing for severability, providing for inclusion, providing for an effective date.
Manager Manners.
We received the CPI letter from Waste Pro, and Paul, if you would come up to the podium, please. Paul's done the calculations, and we're looking at... Sorry, 1 second here. We're looking at a minor increase. With adjustments as outlined, the total sanitation budget will be $530,290. And the solid waste fee assessments for fiscal year 2019-20 will be $423.48. That's a small increase over last year. And we have Paul here if there's questions.
Just the amount of the increase to the...
Yes, I'd like to add for the record also, just because of last year, the clarification, the prior year or current year assessment is a gross number of $406.96, gross including the discount fees. The 2019-2020 proposed fee is a gross number of $423.48. Those are the actual assessments. And I just wanted to put that on the record. Obviously, the formula drove the price increase, nothing else. The inclusive parts of it are the small portion of administrative overhead that is charged to the solid waste fund. We were able to include cost escalators for the proposed insurance increase in this number at a reasonable 3%, which I thought was a fair adjustment, as well as the standard 3% CPI for other fees. So last year we did not have that opportunity because several adjustments came after we did the solid waste. So this year we're more accurate.
Any questions from the Commissioner?
I have a couple. Is this resolution a contract with Waste Pro and setting the sanitation fee for our residents? Is this what does Waste Pro charge and the sanitation fee? We need to have a discussion on that. And I would like to investigate whether or not we can bring back in-house instead of continuing with Waste Pro. We're not taking advantage of everything that's in the contract. An example is a solid yard pickup for garbage should also be for recycling. It's not. Where's the copy of the contract of Waste Pro? It wasn't in my backup. Note, why is the ordinance doing both contract and setting sanitation fees?
Manager, you want to address any of those?
There's quite a few questions there. Hand me the list, please. I'll take a look. Try and go through them. Okay. We do not have we will be looking at Waste Pro starting next month as far as a new contract goes, whether we want to continue with Waste Pro. And actually, that is something that perhaps we can get just a consensus from the commission on tonight, just to see if you'd like to go out to an RFP or if you are content with Waste Pros and would like to consider negotiating a new contract with them. Let's see.
The fees, what's the fees that they're charging us now for?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Samara, they're just having trouble. If you don't mind, just pull the mic a little closer. That's all right. Thank you, sir.
Couldn't hear you, sorry.
Okay, the fees that they're charging now is part of the contract, right? So
yes.
if you're doing the fees now, that means you're extending the contract.
No.
No, that's what I'm asking.
No. Mm-mm. That does not mean that. What we're doing is we're setting the sanitation we're setting the sanitation fees that we send out to our residents to start collecting that money. And so this is what pays Waste Pro ultimately, but this does not necessarily mean that we are extending Waste Pro's contract, and I won't do that without commission input and approval. And then, let's see, what does Waste Pro charge in the sanitation fee? We need. Yeah, this is not about Waste Pro specifically.
I can clarify.
Please, if you would, Attorney Mandel.
This is simply an assessment to set it's a resolution to set the fee assessment that is what is charged to village residents for a solid waste service. This is not related to the contracts. This is just simply the fee that goes out on your bill that everyone, when you see your bill, gets paid. I'm presuming this is a fee that has been on your books for some period of time, and it's just taking that same fee, and every year you're obligated to do a new fee resolution, a fee assessment resolution in order to continue that moving forward. And this is simply doing that which you have done over many years.
And if I may, just really quickly, Mr. Winklejohn or the manager can answer, just so the residents know, what is the additional cost per resident? So approximately additional.
The additional cost is $16.52 per resident.
Thank you.
So
annual.
Annually.
Are we going to have money that we can put away in case we need it? Is that going to be included in that?
No, this isn't. This is not. This just sets the sanitation budget. That's it. So.
Okay. Is any other further discussion?
Just real quick, I think we've talked about this before, though, but according to the Waste Pro, the only tie to the Waste Pro contract is there's language in there for the sanitation budget where the CPI increase, the fuel index increase, and we've had this conversation. You looked at those numbers to ensure that the numbers being provided by Waste Pro are the actual
Yes,
numbers.
sir. I have, as of last year, I went back 5 years prior, evaluated those numbers, verified the index is tracked, because if there was a mistake in the previous number, it would trickle into last year's number. So I have good confidence in the history. There's reasons why I was worried, and confirmed them as accurate. And then this year's number is a clear, simple add-on of about 4%, which is the two index, one for fuel, one for the CPI, that particular CPI. Last year, there was no index for the fuel. They waived it. It was so small, so they just said they chose to waive it, and they put that in writing. The year prior, you had a reduction in your index because the fuel costs were much lower than the original baseline. So you went down, then you went up, and so here you are.
And if I remember correctly, the increase for residents is going to be 4.06%.
Yeah, I said 4, yes.
And I always like to go those two decimal places out, I guess.
I would have said 5.
And the contract with Waste Pro, I think, caps it at 5%?
I think you're right. I didn't look for a cap because I knew it was under it.
So this is under the cap. So I just wanted to clarify that to kind of, because I think it touches on what Commissioner Samaria was also discussing and touching on as well. So I just kind of wanted to clarify that a little bit. So
and the good thing in the back of our minds is, should the commission choose to create an RFP, we need to know the number well before today, a year from now.
I wasn't on the commission before, but didn't I hear Waste Pro say that they had to raise the fee because they come back? And it was in our contract that says they can do this, but then they came back and said that they need to raise the fee because the whatever.
It was the waste fees that they were incurring
Right.
with the county. The county had raised their fees, yes.
Yeah, but if you have a contract, shouldn't the person live up to the contract? Shouldn't they put into their contract knowing that there's a chance that you're going to have to pay it?
That would be a wonderful conversation, but the fact is, it's what's in your contract that we're talking about tonight, and this is what it is.
Okay. If we may, we have a huge agenda and 3 variances. If we may move forward on this resolution, is there a motion to approve Resolution 2019-09?
I make a motion to approve Resolution 2019-09.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Aye.
No.
Okay, motion passes 3-1. Okay,
Thank you.
10B.
A resolution of the Village Commission of the Village of Biscayne Park, Florida, approving the selection of Humana as the village health plan provider, providing for an effective date.
Manager Manners.
Okay, this is for the health insurance for all staff. Our dental and vision remain the same. Our life insurance remains the same. But AvMed had a 21% increase this year to the employee health insurance. We have Graham Pentland from EBS Advisors, and they went out to market, looked at other plans. We found another plan that is actually a little bit better, I believe, than the one we currently have. And whereas AvMed would have been, I believe, $37,000 more this year, this plan is only $5,000 more. So with that,
46 Graham Pentland, EBS Advisors. We help manage your benefits here. As the city manager was saying, we got to pass on your dental insurance, meaning no rate increase, pass on the vision insurance, no rate increase, pass on life insurance, no rate increase, and we got jacked by AvMed to the tune of 21%. We tried to mirror the benefits and went to market and found Humana at a 3% rate increase, which is just over $4,600 for the year, with a comparable but slightly better benefits and a better network. The feedback from staff, we asked some people to look at their providers, and the 2 competitive bids, one from NHP, their providers weren't available, and on the Humana, their providers were. And on Humana, it's open access, meaning they don't have to go see a primary care doctor first. If they need to see a specialist, they hurt their knee, they don't need to pay a PCP fee and then go see an orthopedic. They can just go see the orthopedic. So it seems a win-win. So staff would encourage you to endorse their selection of renewing with 3 rate passes on 3 of the benefits and accept the 3% increase and make the transition to Humana Health Plan.
Thank you. Are there any questions? None? Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you,
do you want to make a motion?
Yeah,
Okay. You might make it. Is there a motion to approve?
accept this.
Go ahead.
I make a motion to accept 12B, employee health insurance.
Okay, so making a motion to approve 2019-12 employee health insurance. Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Old business. We have 2 presentations by our attorneys.
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry, 10C. Nope, 10C.
10C.
Thank you. Resolution 2019-11 vending machine service agreement.
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and read it while they're working on it. Resolution of the mayor of the village of Biscayne.
Oh, wait, are we talking resolution 2019-11?
Yeah.
Yes, you have it?
Sorry, I
Go ahead.
got a little out of order. A resolution of the mayor and village commission of the village of Biscayne Park, Florida, authorizing the village manager to execute an agreement for the provision of vending machine service agreement between the village of Biscayne Park and Double R Vending Corp., providing for an effective date.
Okay, Manager Manners. That item was
this
pulled
is-
because he had a question. Commissioner Smear had a question. Do you want to just talk about it and then take his question?
Sure. I mean, the question was, what's the village split on this? And I'm looking through this contract. I don't know. This is a renewal of an old contract, just a continuation of it. I need to find that out, actually, because I don't have it at the top of my
It's not in there.
hands. Let me see if I can get that information really quickly. You want to move on to the next item, and then we can come back to this?
The next item is attorney presentations.
Okay.
Let me go ahead and move into that.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, can I ask
Yes.
a question before you go into it? I see there's two options. What happened, and I just need to refresh my memory, what happened to the third option of hiring an outside company if we decided not to go?
If I recall correctly, and I'd have to have that in front of me, but I recall correctly, the decision was made by the commission to have two choices and to have them present, and that was done by the commission. So that was something, and I believe we ended up, I think it was unanimous, but I'm not positive on that.
I voted against that.
Okay, so it was 4-1, I believe. Okay, so we're going to have presentations. We welcome Fox Rothschild. Please come on up.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the Commission. As you all know, my name is John Heron. I'm with the law firm of Fox Rothschild, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening to make this presentation to you. I'm joined here this evening by my partner, Mr. Steven Zuckwitz, who is also the managing partner of our firm office in Miami. And we, in response to your very specific request at the March meeting, we provided the biographical details of the individuals who would be part of the team that would provide services to the village if, in fact, we are selected to be your village attorney moving forward. You all are familiar with me. I've provided those services to you when I was a partner with Gray Robinson. Attached to our proposal is a cover letter outlining how we would provide services to you all and at what cost. I want to point out very specifically that in our proposal, if you all accept it, is because I know that this was a concern initially when you all were interviewing candidates to replace Mr. Hearn, and also, it was voiced to me over several times by the mayor and other commissioners, cost containment. Our proposal is to give you the alternative to continue to the existing arrangement as it currently exists with Gray Robinson if you engage Fox Rothschild, or alternatively, we would take the budget, divide it by the remaining months that are in your fiscal year, and go on a monthly retainer agreement. So in that situation, we know what the cost will be, and we won't exceed those as they relate to your remaining budget. And so, if the time and expense that is incurred on your behalf in any given month potentially exceeds that monthly retainer, it's at our cost, not at the villages. To be frank, I don't believe this is, and I hope this is not about Fox versus Gray Robinson. I have a lot of respect for the attorneys who are still at Gray Robinson. I have a lot of respect for Ms. Mandel, for Ms. Protopapadakis and Ms. Rodriguez. So I really like to focus on what it is that Fox can provide to you. And in that regard, if you want someone sitting in your chair and providing you legal services that is local and has, between the two of us, close to 50 years of local government experience, hire Fox. If you want someone who is familiar with the issues of Miami-Dade County and the village of Biscayne Park, based upon our experience and our presence here in the community, and I'll let Mr. Zuckwitz speak to that a little bit later, hire Fox. If you don't hire us. If you want someone who's familiar with the local regulations, particularly as they relate to the interaction between your regulations and those of Miami-Dade County, because Miami-Dade County is a super charter county, and there are very specific provisions of the county code that prevail over those of the village. Hire Fox, because we are familiar with that. We know those regulations. We know what where you're preempted and where you're not. For example, lobbying requirements, ethics requirements, platting requirements. If you want attorneys who are familiar with that, hire Fox. If you want people who are familiar with the state requirements as they relate to local government, hire Fox. We have that experience. We have that knowledge. There isn't a subject matter, a substantive subject matter that will come before this commission or this community that we haven't dealt with and addressed, either myself, Mr. Zelkowitz, or other members of this firm. I know that there is a question about where do we have presence? We are 900 plus attorneys in 25 different states, offices, including Washington, D.C., where we have a cadre of attorneys and specialists dealing with federal government, because I know that was an issue or concern that has been voiced. So we were able to provide those services to you if need be, if that is the situation. Frankly, we don't believe that there would be any drop-off in the quality or quantity of work that would be done if you decide to switch. It's, as I said before, it would be a seamless transition. I'm going to ask Mr. Zelkowitz to make some comments about the firm and our involvement in the community and our knowledge of the community, and then we're available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. My name is Stephen Zelkowitz, and I live at 1200 Northeast 105th Street, Miami Shores. Appreciate the opportunity to address Madam Mayor and the Village Commissioners. The reason I'm here with John is to introduce myself to you. You all don't know me. You've never seen me before. You know John. So John and I have been law partners on and off for over 20 years. We first practiced at Weiss Sirota, and then recently at Gray Robinson. I served as the managing partner of Gray Robinson's Fort Lauderdale office, and then their Miami office for the 13 years I was there. And now I'm at Fox with John again. I've also been your neighbor for 20 years. I live in Miami Shores. I was the vice mayor recently and a councilman. I also serve as the general counsel to your neighbor to the north, North Miami, to their community redevelopment agency. And I've done that since its formation in 2005. So the reason I'm sort of introducing myself to you, I work with John. John is an excellent local government attorney. I do the same work. I don't do it here, I do it in other jurisdictions. North Miami Beach, Hallandale Beach, and other cities. But I want you to know who I am. I want you to know, too, that you have someone in your backyard, basically, and maybe your side yard, who's here, who knows the issues locally, who works locally, knows the people in the area, and cares about the area. So I'm here in that respect, and also to tell you about our firm, which is over 900 attorneys. It's a large firm. It's a great firm. I'm very happy to be there. I spent many years at Gray Robinson, also a great firm. But this firm has a larger platform. It has a further reach. And for that reason, I made the move to go to Fox Rothschild, and John joined me, along with some other Gray Robinson attorneys. But John has served you. I think he served you well. He's given you our proposal. And I think at this point, if you have any questions for John or myself, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Fellow commissioners have any questions?
Yes, I do. I have some questions. One of the things I like to do is I like to have an attorney that we can deal with one attorney. one of the things that I don't like about, in reference to Gray Robinson, is having 3 different attorneys. I called up and got advice, and they gave good advice, but I got 3 different attorneys giving me 3 different advices. None seem to have it. At least one attorney we have, where that one comes to the commission all the time, we can always deal with that, and he knows us best. There was 3 articles. First off, I had a conversation with you, and I want to be sure that the commission knows that I had a conversation with you in reference to 3 articles that was submitted by one of the commissioners to the city manager to pass on to the rest of the commissioners. I would like for you, if possible, if you can deal with those 3 articles. Then the other option is, would you have brought in front of this commission the cost of doing this FEMA appeal? And would you thought that it was important that you should have brought it in front of the commission and given us a cost before it was done?
Let me make a comment and then work my way backward to your 2 questions. As Steve indicated, we're committed to providing quality services to the village in a cost-effective manner and being familiar with your community, and we have those relationships with your adjoining municipalities that we would be interacting with county staff, county commissioners, and so I want to make sure that you are aware of that. As to the 2 questions, Commissioner Samari, that you've posed, I certainly believe, and as I said before, it's made very clear to me during the selection process that led to Gray Robinson becoming your attorney, myself being that representative, that costs were of concern and an issue to this community because of the lack of that you're very close to being maxed out on your millage rate, and so I certainly would back when I was your attorney, communicating with the manager and communicating with the commission to the extent that those questions were asked of me about what your costs were, and to the extent that that was a concern or issue of any of the commissioners moving forward with a particular project, certainly I would advise you what I think that would cost you, and answer any questions in that regard. I can't, there is a little bit of Monday morning quarterbacking there, but I certainly know that that's an important issue to this commission and to this community, and it's something that was, as I moved forward and was handling your legal matters, was of always an issue of concern for me in making sure that we were ultimately going to be within budget at the end of the fiscal year. As far as the articles that were distributed, you can Google my name and find a lot of articles that talk about me in a good light, and I think that the majority of those articles talk about my accomplishments or what I was doing or I have been doing for various clients over the years. And there's certainly going to be and I believe it is a significant minority, some derogatory comments about me and the firms I've worked for over the years and the work that we're doing for certain clients, because in this job I know one reality and one truth is that you can never please everyone. I think that you all understand and know that, and there are going to be naysayers and complainers out there, irrespective of how good you may or may not be doing the job, whether it's that your perception or that of your bosses. One of the articles, as I understand, related to my work when I was the city attorney for the city of Doral. And if anyone knows anything about the city of Doral during that time period, it was rather volatile, to say the least. And the council member who voiced the concerns in that newspaper article, I I think part of by way of explanation, part of those negative comments derived from the fact that as the city attorney, I was asked to do certain things by that councilwoman. And I advised that councilwoman both publicly and privately that I believe that the actions that I was asked to perform were inappropriate and outside of what should be done by a city attorney. And it's ironic that Ms. Protopapadakis is here because she actually got involved to some degree in one of those issues that particular councilwoman was asking me to do, which was to intervene in a litigation matter that was being handled by the city's outside legal counsel, the League of Cities, which is your insurer as well, and which Ms. Protopapadakis has experience in dealing with in the past. And it was the point where the attorneys and the law firm that was representing the town as outside special counsel had to depose that councilwoman in an adversarial setting. And that councilwoman demanded that we provide separate counsel for her at her deposition. And we did. It was actually Ms. Protopapadakis who went to that deposition on behalf of that councilwoman. And so the point being is that there were some disagreements between myself and that particular councilwoman as to how things and what our role as their city attorney were, and what were the limits of what we could and couldn't do, particularly as it related to outside counsel and the limitations of the contractual agreement between the city and the League of Cities as it related to insurance coverage. Basically, if you don't know this already, is for a municipality, when you sign up to be a member of the League of Cities Municipal Insurance Trust Fund, you essentially assign away all your rights to really say something differently. I've been in jurisdictions where the League of Cities has elected to settle a lawsuit, and notwithstanding the council of that municipality saying we don't want to settle on those terms and conditions. And nonetheless, the League of Cities moves forward, and the League of Cities does what it believes is the most appropriate solution for the League of Cities sometimes as it relates to some of those litigation matters. So that is a long explanation or answer to that first ad. The second one, I believe, relates to my tenure while I was the city attorney for the city of Marathon. And I'll tell you straight up, I am proud of the accomplishments and my tenure as the city attorney for the city of Marathon. I was our city attorney for 16 years, and that's darn long for a city attorney in any municipality here in the state of Florida. And the things that we accomplished while I was working for that municipality, I think, are phenomenal. And one individual was unhappy with an ordinance that the city council adopted, not the city attorney. I don't adopt ordinances. And he was unhappy with the result of how that impacted his business. And so he began a campaign of writing letters to the editor, and the editors jumped on that, and some other people in the community to complain about my work as related to that particular issue. And it had to deal with distance separation between establishments that sold alcohol, which is not uncommon. And ultimately, that was the genesis and the reason for those newspaper articles that were negative to my performance during that time at the City of Marathon. The third article, I'm not quite sure what it was about, to be honest with you. So I'm not in a position to answer it.
Thank you.
If we hire your firm, are you the one that's going to be representing us, or are we going to be having different people?
It will be me, just as it was before when I was with Gray Robinson.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commission questions?
No.
No. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll have the second presentation by Gray Robinson. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for coming.
Podium, and then I will wrap up.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Rebecca Rodriguez. I'm a senior associate attorney in Gray Robinson's Miami and Fort Lauderdale offices. I'm joined by
I'm sorry to ask you, could you mind?
and I'm joined by Anastasia Protopapadakis, a shareholder in our Miami office.
Hello, how are you?
So first I'll tell you about our firm, then I'll tell you about myself, and then I'll allow Anastasia to give you her background and Julia to give you hers. So our firm has 15 offices, 14 of which are in Florida. The 15th is in Washington, D.C. We are a Florida-focused firm. We're in many ways a government-focused firm. We represent a lot of not just municipalities but government entities. I myself serve as special counsel to the Emerald Coast Utilities Authority. Anastasia, and she can tell you more about this, serves as outside counsel to the Broward County Public School System. And she is former outside counsel for the League of Cities, which was being discussed earlier today. Apologies. Our firm has many city attorneys throughout the state. We have a very deep bench on Florida-specific municipal issues. Our current managing partner is the longstanding city attorney for the city of Orlando. Our incoming managing partner is the former Speaker of the Florida House. We also, in our Gainesville office, we have Stephanie Marchant, who's the former city attorney for the city of Gainesville. Julia's former city attorney for the city of Tampa. We are Florida lawyers with Florida issues. And you will see that, and I think the commission has already seen that, in how we have handled village legal issues over the past 3 months. What you would get if you stayed with Gray Robinson is a team, and I think that's what Commissioner Samaria was saying. If you have an issue, if the commission has an issue, if the manager has an issue, if the clerk has an issue, they will be emailing me, and depending on the issue, I would have an attorney, or myself, depending on what it is, reach out to that individual in the village to solve the problem. It came up with the ADA issues. If you Google municipalities in Florida getting sued for website compliance with ADA, with vision issues, well, one, you're going to find a lot of articles, and two, you're going to find a lot of articles about litigation Anastasia's handling. This is the new hot thing, and they're getting sued. So when that issue came up, it was quarterback to Anastasia. Land use, we quarterback to Julia. And if it's an issue that requires assistance at the state level, we have very powerful attorneys and lobbyists in Tallahassee. That's one of our biggest strengths for our government entities around the state. And we also have, if it's an issue at the federal level, which we're seeing now with the FEMA claims, we have very powerful lobbyists in Washington, D.C. Our firm is growing. We recently, I think a week ago, acquired a large municipal firm, Thompson Sizemore. And we're here, we're not going anywhere. Our South Florida offices are not niche, they're not experiments. We have offices in Miami, Key West, Boca Raton, West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale. We're here. We're in Florida, we're throughout Florida, and I would be hard-pressed to think of a legal issue this municipality could have that our firm could not solve with the deep bench that we have. And now I'll turn it over to Anastasia.
Good evening. My name is Anastasia Protopapadakis, which is a long last name and one that many have trouble with. I am a litigator by trade, so I deal with litigation issues. And for the first 6 years of my career, I did litigation solely for municipalities. I worked for a firm that was captive counsel, which means they worked only for the Florida League of Cities, and I represented cities and municipalities, including sheriff's offices, school boards, and counties from the Keys all the way to West Palm Beach, well, a little bit further than West Palm. It was the Stuart Jupiter area, and then as far west as Fort Myers. I have dealt with pretty much every legal issue that you can deal with on a state and federal level that municipalities face in the litigation context. When I came to Gray Robinson, I expanded my practice to the private sector, but continued to represent local municipalities. So I assisted John when he was part of our firm, and Mr. Zelkowitz when he was part of our firm, with the cities that they represent. And I also represent the Broward County School Board as part of their outside counsel. So I have maintained a practice in municipal litigation and representing municipalities, and am very comfortable in that environment. And to piggyback off of what Rebecca said, we have many lawyers in our 15 offices that do this kind of work for municipalities. We do it in the administrative context, we do it in the litigation context, we do it in the lobbying context, and we have a lot of contacts in the state of Florida. And that's very important, because when you need issues resolved in Florida, whether it's in our court systems, where Gray Robinson, I think, is one of the largest firms that have the most amount of their lawyers on the bench. That's in the state benches as well as in the appellate courts. We have contacts there. When you need help with Tallahassee, there's no better firm in the state of Florida than Gray Robinson. Julie, I don't know if you want to make a presentation?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me here, and it's been a pleasure to sit with you a few months ago when I did it, and today. And I understand you have a lot of very pressing issues, and there's a lot going on in your jurisdiction. I've pretty much spent the last 25 years of my career representing local governments, mostly in-house, mostly either as an assistant county attorney for Hillsborough County. Yes, that's up in the west part of Florida. And also with the Tampa City Attorney's Office, 10 years as an assistant city attorney or senior. And the last 3 years I was there, I was the city attorney. And one of the benefits of being in-house in larger jurisdictions is you don't just have one attorney who represents the jurisdiction. You have a variety of attorneys. In fact, Hillsborough County, much like what you have at Miami-Dade County and some of your larger jurisdictions, you have the one city attorney, but then you have a tremendous number of other attorneys, whether it's 3, 5, or when I was at the city attorney's office, I had 25 lawyers that worked for me, or I was at the county attorney's office, I worked with another 30 attorneys who all had specializations. It's incredibly hard to find that for small local jurisdictions, because there's just not a lot of law firms that can provide that level of depth. And one of the reasons I chose to go to Gray Robinson when I decided to leave the city attorney's office was because I wanted to continue my representation of local governments, but in a way that allowed that depth to continue to occur. So it is fair to say, yes, I am from Tampa, and maybe you called me a carpetbagger or not coming down here. I was actually born in Mount Sinai Hospital. I don't know if that matters, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, except to the extent that you know that every single issue you have for your jurisdiction, there is a person who can handle it. It will get done. It will get done quickly. From our proposal, you see that Rebecca will serve as the lead attorney, because it is fair to say that you need one attorney to sort of be the quarterback to pitch hit. She's down here. She knows your jurisdiction. She didn't know before. She's known it over the last 3 months. And in all candor, I know that there's been discussion about the FEMA appeals. Getting that together in that short a period of time was a really, really, really tremendous feat, and you can discuss all the other stuff about it, but making sure that got done was really tremendous. I represent other jurisdictions that are struggling mightily with that exact same issue, so I think that that's important. But that is what our law firm provides. It really is having a larger city attorney office in a law firm where most jurisdictions don't have the benefit of that. So that is what we offer. And I did want to make a comment based upon what John said, because I've been in this business about as long as John has. You Google my name, you're going to find a lot of articles too. And whether or not that's good, bad, or indifferent, there's a story behind them all, but that's not really the point. The point is we're all here to do the best job for you that we can and be your lawyers. We are your lawyers. We are not policy advisors, we are lawyers. And it is important when you make a selection that you hire someone that can give you the best legal advice, that can keep you out of trouble, and that can sometimes say no. Because our job at its worst and best as lawyers for governmental entities is sometimes to explain why you can't do something, which is the least fun part of this job, but we all have to do it. I really appreciate this opportunity. It has been a tremendous pleasure. And I really do believe that for your needs at this time, that Gray Robinson serves you the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Yes. Yes, I have some.
Commissioner Smith.
If we hire your firm, well, first off, was your firm, and I hope I can explain this right, wasn't your firm with him? when he was there? How come we never seen any of the other attorneys come down here? We only had to deal with him. What's making it different now? Are we going to be getting one attorney, or are we going to be getting 3 different attorneys? And is the cost going to be extra?
What our proposal is that Rebecca is serving as lead attorney, and if there, much like when I was the city attorney for Tampa, there was a city attorney, but if there was somebody that you needed for a land use item, you went to the land use lawyer. And that's up to Rebecca to be as the lead attorney, to be the person who is quarterbacking that for you. And the cost will be as it's provided for in your agreement, which is...
I can speak to that. Yeah, I can speak to that, because I think there's some confusion about what our pay structure is. Whether you get our managing partner or a lawyer who was admitted yesterday, our firm charges a flat fee for every lawyer, and that fee is $225 an hour, I believe. So I just want to clear that up. If the village has a nuanced issue that's going to require someone very senior who specializes in a very unique issue, you're still paying $225 an hour. That doesn't change. The only thing that changes is you would have access to a lot of Florida lawyers at that rate. Very senior lawyers, very experienced lawyers at that rate. And what was the other question, Commissioner Samari?
Well,
that answers the rate question.
One of the concerns I have is this appeal process that we're doing right now. It was never brought in front of the commission what the cost was going to be for doing those 3 appeal processes. Don't they have a certain amount of money that they allowed, that we budget, that the commission passed budget for them all? Shouldn't this have been brought in front of the commission?
I can speak as to how we will be billing it. We are billing it consistent with the retainer agreement the village currently has. We drafted those appeals as the sitting attorneys for the village of Biscayne Park. So we're subject to the retainer that exists, charged hourly at $225 an hour, irrespective of who worked on it, as long as they were an attorney. I know that before H2O said they wouldn't do it, they did provide a pretty... I'll let you speak to that because I don't recall the amount, but we are not billing what H2O would have billed you, I can tell you that.
H2O offered to do the appeals for an additional $40,000 on top of what we'd already paid them. And so I believe
I don't think
attorneys
ours
can
will
do
be half
that
of
for
that.
considerably less.
Okay. See if I can understand this, Kevin. What is, and I wasn't on the commission, so I don't know the answer to that, that's why I'm asking you. What is their contract says on how much money? Isn't it something about $73,000 they allowed to, whatever the amount? You tell me what it is. What is the amount that the law firm is not supposed to go over?
I believe we budgeted $75,000 for that.
$75,000.
For legal.
You don't think it's going to go over with these 3 appeals?
I think it possibly could. I think that realistically, though, if we go a few $1,000 over with these appeals, and we get the $1 million back that we currently have, I think it's money well spent.
But I also think, if I'm correct, anything over $10,000 is supposed to be brought back in front of this commission. Is that correct? Any money that's spent over $10,000 is supposed to be brought back. Meaning, if it goes over $10,000, you're supposed to come in front of the, and I'm again asking because I wasn't on the commission before. You're supposed to come back in front of the commission to get permission to spend over $10,000.
May I ask a point on that, Commissioner Smear, if I may? I believe we're up professional services, correct? And manager, you can do this, professional services. I also want to state that I wasn't going to do this tonight. I really was not. But I think it's important to note that the honesty level here is pretty high. Approximately a couple weeks ago, there was an oversight on the bill that was sent by Attorney Herron, and we were credited $4,100. Apparently there was an error in the bill. It was brought forth during a conversation just to let us know it was coming. Is that correct? And so we already got credited back $4,100, which I'm sure will help offset some of those costs. But the other thing I want to mention is that it is not uncommon for attorneys to do appeals. Matter of fact, that's, I think, in many cases how it's done. But when H2O decided to just walk away, even though it was in their contract at $50,000 or $40,000, whatever the price was, at the fact that they stepped in and made sure it got done, I'm extremely appreciative. And with the $1 million we're looking at trying to get back, whether it's $10,000, whether it's 9,000, whether it's 4,000, whatever it ends up being, I don't think we had like an option.
No, that's not the question I'm asking. The question is, you're supposed to, when you're spending $10,000, it's supposed to be brought back in front of this commission. One is, do you have any ideas on how much this appeal process so far has cost us?
Well, the bills haven't been ran yet, but ballpark, and again, I haven't seen the bills. I would say it was probably around 5,000 per appeal from start to finish. So ballpark, and again, ballpark. The bills have not been ran yet.
I understand that.
Around 17,000. But I will point out that nobody would have done this for free, and H2O was. I don't want to speak ill of H2O.
No.
They quoted 40,000, and then they pivoted and said we're not going to do it at all. And the timing of that is important. I want everyone to understand that when H2O said we're not going to do it, the clock had been running, and FEMA doesn't really give extensions. So.
And they promised, by the way, on the phone, they had promised they were working on it and they'd have it. And they waited to the last minute before they decided to pull that clock.
I just want to.
I think you're thinking that I'm criticizing the appeal process. What I'm criticizing is that it was not brought in front of this commission. The commission says, the rule says that for the city manager, anything over $10,000 has to be brought in front of the commission. This was never done.
I think we're operating under our existing agreement.
Correct.
Right. If we get past that $75,000, then I think at that point in time, we would be in a position of having to come back to the commission. But I don't know that we've exceeded that amount, so we're really operating under what is existing. Now, I have other contracts where we do have separate amounts for appeals and those things. That's not the way your current agreement operates, and it is capped at a certain amount, but I don't know that we've gotten to that amount, so I'm not really sure I understand
the budget that you set was for was basically to calculate how many meetings we have per year, approximately, and then anything else that comes up. You don't think we're going to go over that budget?
If I may, I just want to go back to what I was saying.
Please.
Because it's important. H2O told the village, we're not doing this appeal on March 21st. The first appeal deadline was like April 16th or 17th. You had less than 30 days. That wasn't enough time to get an RFP out to go out in the market to find another consultant. That was honestly barely enough time to get the appeal done, considering how voluminous the records were post-Irma. So it was honestly either the existing attorneys that had a contract that protected the village because we were already a service provider of legal services cranked out the appeal, or the appeal would have been waived. All three of them, and it was like $1 million.
You're still not getting what I'm saying.
Okay. No, I'm getting what you're saying. Let me explain this to you. Okay.
Don't be disrespectful.
And so, I'm not.
Commissioner Samaria. Commissioner Samaria, please. Commissioner Samaria, please.
The money is supposed. Anytime you spend $10,000,
no.
Listen, please don't interrupt me now. Okay. I'm not saying you're not doing a good job, and I'm not saying you wasn't. I just feel that I needed to know what this money was being spent on. Nobody told me what was going to be spent on this appeal. First off, I never even knew that your company was hired until this was approached. This should have been brought in front of this commission. Sorry, it should have been brought in front of this commission.
Commissioner, let me be clear. We have a contract with Gray Robinson. This is part of that contract. They're doing legal work for us under that $75,000. This isn't, if we see that we're going to go over the $75,000, then of course it'll be brought in front of the commission. However, in the meantime, this is all part and parcel of this. I don't bring everything before the commission that I speak to the attorneys about. And in this particular instance, we were pressed for time. There was a great deal of money on the other side of this, and that's exactly how it is. So what you're asking is, certainly if we had gone out to an outside company to do this appeal, it would have come before the commission. But we used one that we already had a professional services agreement with, period.
Thank you. Okay. It is now, I'm just going to make it clear, it's 9:35. I just want to make sure we're clear so we can move forward. We do have 3 variances this evening that we've advertised for. So I apologize, but I want to make sure I gave ample time to everybody. Is there any more, well, let me first ask, if any other commissioners have any questions for the attorneys? I just want to thank you for all the work on the appeal that you did in incredible time frame, so thank you. Okay. With that in mind, is there any further discussion from the commission on the attorneys before we decide?
Not for me.
Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion to either retain Gray Robinson or Fox Rothschild?
I make a motion to accept Fox Rothschild as our attorney.
Okay, is there a second? Motion dies. Is there a motion to approve Gray Robinson?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye.
No.
Motion passes 3-1. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for presenting. And congratulations to Gray Robinson for the retention. Okay, we are moving on to variance of 11390.
Do you want us to get back to that resolution real quickly? I have the number now.
Oh, yes, please.
So, there's a 25% portion of that comes to the village. 75% of the proceeds from the vending machines goes to the vending company.
Okay. If that's the case, is there any other questions regarding that? And if so, I'm asking respectfully, we have 3 variances to get through.
I know.
So I would appreciate very much if we can hurry this along a little bit, please. Is there any other questions about that? To Mrs. Mary?
Is that the same amount that we had the last time? 30%?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2019-11 vending machine services?
I make a motion to approve 2009.
2019-11.
Okay. Make a resolution to approve 2019-11 vending machine service agreement.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Okay, we have a variance. I'm going to try and shorten things up a little bit, I'm going to ask the attorney if this is possible. Read the four reasons why variances, all 4 pieces that the variances must be granted. I think I put that in front of you also. I gave you, okay. And then maybe we can swear. Can we swear everybody in or not?
You can swear everybody in right now. That's
Beautiful. We'll swear anybody who wants to speak on any one of the 3 variances. You will be sworn in at this time. Okay? We'll take one variance at a time. We're going to start with the variance on 11390. Then we'll move to, if it's no objection to the council, just to make sure these variances get through, I'm going to move my A12A down below the last variance so we can get all 3 variances done. Is there no objection from the council? Okay. Got that? Okay. So, with that, I'll turn it over to the village attorney, Attorney Mendel.
Thank you. This is the same for all 3 variances in terms of the standard of review. All 3 variants do come to the commission with a recommendation for your planning and zoning board. You are looking at these variances through a quasi-judicial proceeding under which you are to accept the evidence and testimony which is provided to you, as well as the information that has been previously provided through the staff reports, and make your decision based upon that evidence. If there has been any ex parte communications outside the forum within the commissioners, you need to put those ex parte communications on the record so that everybody is aware of those communications. The standard for your variance, and I'm going to read what is your required findings, is that there is there's a special circumstance or condition affecting the property that are such that the strict application of the provisions of the chapter or zoning code would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of the land. That the variant, number 2, that the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights of the petitioner. 3, that the granting of the variance will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to other property in the territory in which the property is situated. 4, that the variance proposed is a minimum variance which makes possible the reasonable use of the property.
Thank you.
I'll just say one other thing. You do have the right to impose conditions on the variances as you hear them. However, those conditions must be rationally related to the variance requested and can't just be some other issue not related to this. Thank you.
Thank you. If we may have everybody who is going to speak on any one of the 3 variances, please rise to be sworn in. Attorney Mendel.
I swear or affirm that I will provide evidence and testimony that is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Okay. If we start with petitioner or with the P&Z? Can we start with P&Z?
Yeah, it's from the...
With the variance?
I was thinking...
Hold on, please, one at a time. Just one at a time, please.
Not so much. With this particular variance, this is 11390 Northeast 8th Avenue. It's 11B. We have Andrew Olis, who's our Vice Chair of Planning and Zoning, here tonight. That'll clear up some of this. The recommendation from Planning and Zoning was denied approval at the board meeting of 1/7/2019. This came up at a commission meeting, I believe it was either last month or month prior. One thing that I would like to address is that we had some bad information during that meeting. We thought that there was an easement running through the backyard that would preclude them putting the shed in the back corner of the yard. I spoke with David Hernandez. We reviewed the plans again, and that's not actually an easement. And so from that perspective, that's eliminated. And then we have, the per P&Z, their reason for their decision was that all four variance requirements were not met. And with that, I'll let you, if you guys have questions for myself or...
And if I can just say for the record, this was the item that was previously continued due to a misnotice. So because that hearing did go forward on a misnotice, we should hold the hearing as if that...
As if it didn't happen?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Andrew Wallace, Vice Chairman of Planning and Zoning Board for 18 years. It was not just the only reason we unanimously denied the variance was for the four conditions. Bottom line is that pergola was built without a permit. It was built in the setback, although it is a pergola, which is like an open structure, it's still a structure that's in the ground and it's in the setback. Setbacks are sacred. In our code, we don't allow anything to be built in the setback. And that supersedes the county code, which may allow maybe something to be set in the setback. In our code, structures aren't allowed to be built in the setback. Also, there's a shed that there was a permit applied for, and we agreed on the location for, but it's not in that location. It was put in another location, and so the permit was denied because it's not in the location that was agreed for the permit. And again, it was unanimously denied by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Olis? Mr. Olis, may I ask you a question regarding that? I know we have ancillary structures that are not permitted because of the setback, correct? In our code, but we are silent on pergolas, is that correct? Are we silent on pergolas? And historically, since you've been there for 18 years, have you had other pergolas come before you?
It's pergola, anything. It's set into the ground with cement and everything in the ground. It's a structure. And this one happens to be very tall. I mean, it's not even at the fence line. It's way above the fence line.
Okay. And historically, have we had pergolas before where we've denied a setback?
I may look young, but I'm old. I don't remember.
Understand. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, if we can have the petitioner up first, if we may. Petitioners up, please. This is a do-over. So if you could present your case, please. Thank you.
Marie Emmanuel Thiard, and it's 11390 Northeast 8th Avenue.
I'm Laurent Nangyo.
Thank you. Do you guys want to go ahead and present?
Yes, we have letters here. We're actually affidavits that are signed by our closest neighbors, accepting the various requests for the pergola in the shed.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
We have two of the letters on the attachment.
We have the two letters already on the attachments? Okay.
Well, you have two of the four.
Oh, there's four now.
Yes,
okay.
We provided them by email to Jean-Paul.
Okay. I haven't had a chance to review them, but I'm looking at them, they all are notarized, and that was one of the criteria. And I'm going to assume, unless someone tells me I'm wrong, that these do constitute the correct neighbors that would have needed to provide affidavits under Miami-Dade's code, having adjoining property. And I have one letter for the purpose of the record, Christine Martinez, who's located 11390 Northeast 8th
Sorry,
Avenue.
that is my address. Christine is...
Oh, okay. Oh, I apologize.
Yes, she's right
Right across the street.
from us.
Okay. Okay, I see her address. Okay.
So all the neighbors are surrounding us, kind of. It's the only ones that can basically see that. They cannot even see it. Nobody can really see the pergola, but it's the ones that are the closest ones. So we can get any better than that.
Yes, they're surrounding neighbors.
If these are the surrounding neighbors, I'm going to accept that testimony that was granted, that was just put on the record, that these are the surrounding neighbors. These are in fact the surrounding neighbors. We are going to actually have to go back and double check because we don't have their addresses on here. But you have presented evidence that these are your surrounding neighbors. You did get notarized letters from them, which do constitute compliance with Miami-Dade County Code as it relates to pergola. Therefore, it is, in my opinion, something that you can allow to be retain that location without a variance. I want to make the caveat, though, that if we go back and we double check and we find out that these are not the neighbors, then we'll consider that to be a closed case.
Of course, no problem.
Meaning that it will be deemed withdrawn, and they will have to either reapply for another variance or we'll have to remove the structure.
Thank you.
Ma'am, it's incorrect.
Okay, if you guys know, because the chair...
That was the information advice that I gave 2 meetings ago on this
Our
issue
code,
previously.
Biscayne Park Code supersedes the Dade County Code. Our code clearly states there's nothing to be, no structures to be built in the setback. Our code supersedes the Dade County Code.
Okay, could
That was not the conversation or the information that I was provided when this
Stating
originally
the
came
fact.
out.
Mr. Ollis, may I ask you a question? Because this is one of the things, when I looked up the code, and there was nobody here from P&Z, so you have to understand that we went from that. When we looked at the code, it was on an ancillary structure, and our ancillary structure was defined by other codes, whereas the pergolas were not. So the issue of no walls and so forth. And at that time, just so you know, because you weren't here, but at that time, during our last variance, and then it was stopped, the issue was which code supersedes, the Miami-Dade or the R code, which did not have anything in it and it was silent on pergolas.
We're a non-inclusive code. If it's not mentioned, then it's not allowed. Boom.
That's it. That's why I'm, okay.
I will say this. I, in looking at that issue 2 meetings ago, understanding that staff, as I understood it, was taking the position that our code was silent, not that it was a prohibited item, that our code was completely and utterly silent and there was no similarly situated code provision that could be utilized. And I looked at it and it defaults to the Miami-Dade County Code, and now I'm hearing different information, and I was under the understanding that that has been the way this has been interpreted. I don't take the position where the legal department or your lawyers interpret code. We just provide legal advice based upon the interpretation we are given. So we sit at somewhat of a crossroads. Now that previous variance application did need to be heard through a misnotice tonight. We can do this one of 2 ways, and I'm going to leave this up to the applicant because it's up to you. You can go ahead and present evidence as it relates to both variances, and then I will go back and reanalyze this issue, and if in fact, even if your variance gets denied on that issue, if the code allows it and those meet the code, you get to keep it. So we could do it that way, or alternatively, you can say you don't want to deal with that issue, you want to accept the previous information that I was given and that you understand to be the case, and we only hear the variance as it relates to the other structure. I'll let you make that decision as it's your application.
So so we have to make a decision as to whether we want to have the variance on the shed or
just do it for everything, and we'll deal with the fact you have these affidavits that seemingly meet Miami-Dade Code as I understood it.
Right.
And I was told what the interpretation was at 2 meetings ago.
Right.
And I was giving legal advice based upon the interpretation I was given.
Okay.
So you can make the presentation for it all, or make the presentation only for one, and we can deal with that situation separately.
On va connaître 12 l'application, on va créer we'll proceed with doing we're continuing the variance request for both structures.
Very good. We'll proceed forward with that. For the purposes of the record, I'm going to go back, review that issue again, look at those affidavits, and if in fact it does meet the criteria for Miami-Dade Code and there is no superseding ordinance, then that, regardless of the action here, if you're allowed to legally have it, you get to keep it.
Yeah, we were told since the very beginning that we had a chance to have it. So that's why we hired an architect. We paid for the variance.
I understand.
We did everything, like with the neighbors. We did everything we could. We provided a survey. We did everything because we were told since day one that we had a chance.
That's why we make it clear for the record that notwithstanding anything else that happens today, you can have that under the Miami-Dade County Code, and those affidavits meet the Miami-Dade County Code. It is something that you can proceed forward with.
We even got the shed approved by the inspector and everything. So.
Understood.
Okay, do you want to continue on the shed itself? I know you went to the pergola. Is there anything else you want to report on the shed?
No, I mean, we have, you guys have everything that we provided. I mean, we don't have any additional.
So, is there questions from the commissioners? On the shed. Commissioner Tudor.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, after you.
Oh, thank you.
Commissioner Tudor, then Commissioner Wise.
Yeah, this is one of those, I think one of these items we're going to have to clear up is about the code, inclusive, not inclusive, because under that logic, there's another item on a variance on later tonight about solar panels that's not in our code, so that means they would not be allowed. Is my understanding from the testimony from the P&Z board member. I'm of the mindset that if our codes are not addressing the issue, then we should be falling back to the county code, which covers pergolas, and it's very specific about that. If they're under 100 square feet, which I think this is 11 by 9.
It's 99.
99 square feet, so it's right there. They lay out the required setbacks. I think these are the type of items, and I'm just going to make a general statement real quick. These are the type of items, this and another issue that's coming up, that if we feel that if P&Z or the administration feels that we need to address, they need to bring it forward to the commission so that we can discuss it and possibly draft code to cover the issue. And it really is kind of it. I'm a rules person. I go by what's listed in black and white, and unfortunately, we don't really have the guidance in our local codes on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Wise.
I just wanted to understand a little bit better. There was testimony that the shed was meant to be placed in a certain spot and then was later built in a different spot.
When we provided the plans, we had the shed and the pergola exactly where they are right now. We did provide them otherwise. I don't know if, it was misunderstood, but the drawings were exactly as they are.
We didn't provide any information that was incorrect.
And
that was not us.
The shed was even approved in its location.
We have the proof that it's been signed, approved by the inspector.
Yes.
What better can we do?
Am I misunderstanding? I thought that there was testimony that the shed was not placed where it was originally meant to be, and that's why. Can I understand that a little bit better? I just want to understand.
If you look at your packet with a diagram and it's even highlighted where the shed was approved.
But they have something different. There's
way
two different.
What we provided.
He said, she said.
The inspector came to our house, so he saw where the shed was.
It's signed.
Page 2.
Page 2. Thank you.
There's too much paper here.
I don't see it. Mr. Ellis, would you be so kind to Mr. Ellis?
Nope.
Mr. Ellis? May I borrow, because I'm trying to find where you are, and I don't want to be flipping through pages. Thank you so much, if I may borrow that for a moment. Thank you, sir. Okay, so that's where it is, right? Thank you, sir. We don't have that, I don't think.
Okay, so here it would have been behind, obstructed by the house, not visible from the street.
This is a quasi-judicial proceeding.
I'm sorry. My apologize, just to be fair to everyone.
I know.
But fair to everyone, this is the survey. This is the survey. I just want to make sure, Attorney, I'm correct on this. This is the survey that he's...
It's in the packet.
It's in the packet.
Yeah.
All right, good. I just want to make sure everybody in the audience knows as well. Thank you, it's now here.
This one.
It's right before the page, yep.
And of course, we have no control over the building department, what they're approving, we do our job in P&Z. Beyond that, we don't follow up or check on where things are placed or whatever. We look at the plan, we approve it, and move on.
Is this the one that was showing you, was the one in the place in the back was the one that you seen, right? You didn't see this one? The one that's in the front? 'Cause it looks like...
Well, that's their variance application.
That's our latest survey, not
That's what they're trying to do
Right.
now.
Yeah.
What we saw
It was the one in the back.
attached to the permit
What planning and zoning
is
approved?
this.
And this, did you approve the one that was in the back?
Yeah. I mean, here, in your package should be the permit and the diagram.
Thank you so much, sir. So, the testimony from the vice chair is that the shed was supposed to be adjacent to the north of the pergola.
What Rick requested was to have the shed exactly where it was supposed to be, because we wanted to have the pergola in the back because we didn't really have any space to put it before the shed. It doesn't really make sense to have the pergola there and then the shed in the backyard where we can't really enjoy the backyard. I mean, we have limited space. And that's exactly how we provided it to the city. We didn't, I'm sorry that there was a misunderstanding between them, but that's not how we requested the variance or the permits.
May I show you what they're referring to,
Yes.
so we're on the same? Okay. This is, and so everybody in the audience as well, this is the permit application, okay? On the back of the permit application is the highlight where they're saying that it was done.
Well, it wasn't highlighted like that when I was...
You'll have to, I'm sorry, if you don't mind, at the mic, thank you.
When we requested it, it wasn't highlighted that way. Like I said, it was a misunderstanding because where we have the pergola is where we wanted to have it, and the shed was supposed to be in the front.
Okay, so there is a discrepancy in that, Attorney Mandel?
That is correct.
I believe both parties are absolutely are specific about what is or is not, so I'm trying to find how we can we clarify this?
Okay.
Is there any way to?
Yeah, but is the shed allowed to be, where it is right now, is the shed allowed to be there? No, I'm talking to him.
Okay.
To you.
No, it's in the setback on the side of the house.
Thank you.
So, actually, if you find any other spot to put that shed, I'm willing to put it there, but I don't see where we could move it to.
Okay.
That would be a better place than where it is now.
Okay. Thank you. So there is one discrepancy that if Manager Manners could perhaps reach out to and find out whether or not that was an original application, because I think that is pertinent here. I must accept the testimony of the vice chair of the board that that's what they approved was next to the shed and not in front. There's definitely a misinterpretation there of where it was put. I do have a question regarding the permit. So when they applied for the retroactive permit, that was because according to our records, it was placed without a permit in the wrong location. Is that correct? And they were charged a double permit fee? I just want to make sure.
Let me just look through this real quickly and come up. Yes, there was a double fee charged. It was due to a code enforcement. That was brought through in code enforcement, yes.
Okay.
So that's where the permit came in.
So in order to be charged a double permit fee, they would have had to put the permit, and I want to just back up from Mr. Ollis, I just want to be clear, the sequence of events. So when they came before you, that was after the shed was already in or before the shed was in?
It was already in, but we approved it for the location that's highlighted. But they did everything without a permit.
Okay, so the shed was installed without a permit. They came back before you. You then approved what you thought was the location, to your knowledge.
Yes.
And in their case, they believe since it was already installed, they clearly was going to keep it at that location. Okay. So clearly there's
I would assume so.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Yes.
As I brought, and I exaggerated at the last commission meeting, or the meeting before that, when I said if you put up a building or let's say if you build a kitchen and you did it without a permit, all of a sudden you're going to when they find out that you did it without a permit, are you going to tear the kitchen down and do it again? The problem I have with this is this was done without a permit, and that's my problem with this.
Just to be fair to everybody else, if there's no questions left from the commission, you have a question, Commissioner Tudor? No. I'd like to make sure everybody else is allowed to testify, so if we can take any other public testimony, please, at this time. Thank you. If we have any further questions, we'll call you back up. Thank you so much.
Gary Kuehl, 111th Street. I'm hearing that they have a permit. It was denied by planning and zoning. How did they obtain a permit? How does something... I mean, how does that happen?
No, what they said, Mr. Kuehl, just to be clear, and that's what I was clarifying, is they built the shed without the permit. When they went in front of P&Z, P&Z was under the impression it was in the backyard. They are saying that that was not the case, that it was always in the front.
I understand all of that, but did I misunderstand the village manager that there was a permit issued for this?
My understanding is that there was an after-the-fact permit issued, PB 180523.
Well, let me finish, and then you can talk, okay? Okay, well, I don't understand that. That makes no sense. If P&Z designed it, they shouldn't have been able to get a permit. But beyond that, remember, there's setbacks, and this is built entirely in the setback. And if you wave the magic wand or come up with some reason to accept this, you now set a precedent. You're now telling everybody in the community, put your shed wherever you want, build your pergola wherever you want. Bear that in mind, because how can you approve one and deny another? Okay, this is in violation of our code, and it is the prerogative of the village to be more restrictive than the county. The county may allow it, we do not. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
If I could just say for purposes of the record, notwithstanding the fact, and it sounds like there's some confusion as to whether or not, and I haven't got clarity on it, an after-fact permit was granted. Just because the permit was granted doesn't mean that the jurisdiction to grant or deny the variance wouldn't supersede that. And I think that we need to all be clear on that, because you don't want to get into a position where we're stopped from making a decision, and it doesn't sound to me that we are. So, notwithstanding the fact that maybe a permit was issued, maybe it's not, maybe that's another conversation for another day, that doesn't take away your right to make this decision.
Thank you. Just state your name, if you would, and address, please. Thank you.
Sure. My name is Christy. I live at 11389 Northeast 8th Avenue. I am the direct front door neighbor of Marie and Mr. Thread. Here today to state that their property, whether it's considered a grandfather in or not, or whether a code or not, their property is very different from many properties in the city. When they bought their property, they had a driveway already set within a setback. So their house, their driveway is made out of concrete, is on the line of their property. They put that shed, when they did it 5-6 years ago, I'm not sure when, on that land piece of concrete. The only place that they can put in their house. They don't really have a backyard. They don't really have a side yard. That's all they have. So at one point, following code or not code, that concrete driveway exists, and that shed was put on that concrete. With every code, with every variance, there are ways to waive when you look at people and what they do. And I believe if it affects someone personally, in someone's way of living, that shouldn't deter someone or make someone offensive because of it. I believe that these are neighbors. They're good neighbors. They don't bother anyone. They tend to their yards. They're exemplary. They trim the trees. They throw out their trash. They are great neighbors, and to deter them from doing something that can enhance their lives for something that's code that's not written, going back and forth, something that should be probably grandfathered in, is, to me, I find somewhat a bit ridiculous, and I think this is something that the commission should look into possibly waiving. Thank you.
Any further testimony from the public?
Chuck Ross, 11166 Griffin Boulevard. I just want to weigh in on the inclusiveness of our code. The way our code is structured, if it's not in there, unless there is certain federal regulations that are, for example, as you mentioned, Commissioner Tudor mentioned, one of the variances coming up is about solar panels. Happens to be one of the things that they are encouraging, the federal, as I understand it. The gentleman that's with Fred Jonas will explain that better, I'm sure. But we don't default to Miami-Dade County Code. If it's not in our code, generally speaking, you can't do it. And I'm not saying that, I'm not speaking for or against what they've done on their property, just about our code. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan Schneider, 11705 Northeast 11th Place. What happened was the residents came in and they said, we want to build a shed here, which was not in the setback. We approved it. They were given a permit. Then they went and built it in the setback where they apparently really wanted to put the shed. Then they got caught doing that and came back and claimed ignorance and said, this isn't where we wanted it. We never said that. We didn't do that. But the fact is, they came in and said they were going to build it in this place and they were given a permit. Then they left and built it in the setback, which is never allowed. You cannot build a structure in the setback. Setbacks are sacred. But they did it anyway, got caught, and then came back, and then we denied the permit.
Thank you. And thank you. Any other public comments? Okay. Commissioners, discussion?
What may be helpful, and I don't know how the rest of the commissioners feel though, is having the recordings or transcripts pulled from that P&Z meeting. Maybe to hear what this discussion was, because we do run into a situation where we're hearing two different stories. So in order to have all the facts, that may be something we may want to listen to.
Were you at the meeting? Do you recall it?
Honestly, I don't recall the meeting. In speaking, who were both there, it sounds like that they went to P&Z. Not working. Yeah. That they went to P&Z. Hold on, I just have to eat the mic. That does seem like the accurate portrayal of what happened is that they went to planning and zoning, got one thing approved, put the shed on the driveway instead, which was in the setback. And so that's my understanding of the sequence of events with that. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Wise, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate your recounting manager manners, and I concur with Commissioner Tudor. It would definitely be helpful to have an accurate recounting. It's just, for me, it's just a little confusing because here we have a concrete slab highlighted. There's nothing that says, it just says CS. It doesn't say this is where the thing's going to go. But then here we actually have, I mean, this is current, I understand. I just have a hard time thinking ill of my neighbors that they would just try and pull a fast one. I could be being totally naive, but this seems like an awfully hard and long battle to fight. It seems like it would be quite easy to move the shed over to the existing concrete slab. Why wouldn't they do that if they got caught with their hand in a cookie jar? Why wouldn't they just go, all right, we'll move it over? I'm sharing my processing right now. At the end of the day, I don't think things should be built without a permit. I think it's wrong. I agree that the setbacks are sacred. I also agree that there are peculiar properties, and to grant a variance on a peculiar property, even though a variance runs with the land, that property will always be peculiar. Any owner will deal with those issues. I think that is an okay thing to do, so long as we are very clear that we're not willy-nilly letting people build things inside of the setback. That being said, if something was done in an underhanded fashion, I don't think it should be allowed to slip through. So I have to be honest, I'm wrestling with this. I don't think people should be rewarded for bad behavior, but I also see the other side of the argument.
since we're having, and I don't know how this, we don't normally do this, so I'm going to ask the attorney and to weigh in a bit on this. I think we have insufficient facts at this point to make a determination on at least minimally the shed. I think we also have an issue regarding code and getting a legal determination as to whether or not we can follow Miami-Dade County Code for the pergola. They have submitted letters. I personally understand the issue with the setbacks, and I do understand that Mr. Ollis has been doing this for a very long time, and he's volunteered and committed for an incredibly long time. And I do also agree that setbacks are sacred, but I do have an issue with our code, not planning and zoning, but our code, and how certain things are just not defined. Sometimes we have garden structures, we treat them like garden structures. Sometimes we treat them like ancillary structures. I just think we need to be clear on it, and if it's broken, we need to fix it from a legal perspective. But I also think we don't have a ruling on that either. So I'm kind of left here kind of juggling, and these poor people have been back now how many times? And I know because I had that with my fence. So they've already been back twice. I'd like to see what we could do to, can we do a continuance, and if we had to come back tomorrow just to finish this, for this one item?
A couple of different things. First of all, it's up to the applicant to decide whether or not they want to proceed forward or not on their application. You have the evidence that you have in front of you, and you can make the decision based upon the evidence presented, and it's up to them to decide if they want a continuance or not to have a continuance. I'm concerned about not having enough time for something like that to roll over until tomorrow, because although we can continue it and the public hearing can go forward, you don't have enough time to properly notice a board meeting tomorrow under the Sunshine Law. So that is not something I would recommend. But I think first you have to find out from them, as it relates to this conflict that I maybe jumped the gun taking a position on several months ago, under the understanding that that has not just been the historic interpretation that looking at your code I thought was an appropriate interpretation, that if your code is silent as to something you default, I'm now hearing that's in fact not the way it has been interpreted. Notwithstanding, you still can look at the pergola variance and we could deal with that regardless of whatever that is. And they said that they still wanted to have that reviewed. But before we do anything further, I really think it would be appropriate to ask them, the applicants, whether or not they would like a continuance for all of those issues to be managed, or if they just want their decision made today. They have that right.
I just wanted to state one thing. If we had the shed where it was, why would we ask for a permit and then have the permit be granted if we thought that we would have to move it in the back? So we asked specifically for where the shed and the pergola are at this point. So we didn't pull a fast one on anyone. So I just wanted to point that out. Yes, we would like to continue with the variance request for those two items.
You want to continue
Yes,
those?
yes.
I would just recommend you continue those to your next meeting, continue that on the record, and that way it can be heard at your next meeting, and during that period of time, the issue as it relates to the Miami-Dade Code can be resolved.
Okay, is there, do we need to make a formal motion for that? Attorney Mandel, do we need to make a formal motion for that?
I'll do it again. Would you like me to to state a motion so that you can?
Yes, correct.
Do you have the date for your next meeting?
June 4th. Hold on.
June 4th.
I would like somebody to make a motion to
Yeah, June
continue
4th.
this variance request item number, I've lost my place.
11B.
11B, to have that continue to your June 4th agenda under your public hearings for quasi-judicial matters.
Is there such a motion?
Motion to continue item 11B to the June 4th meeting.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor. Do we have to, Julia, do we have to
Renotice?
Advertise again?
You do not need to advertise, as we are continuing this on the record to a date certain.
Thank you.
Real quick, on this item, if I could, I'd like to have the, I can put a request in though, but if the manager could look for the recordings from that P&Z meeting would be helpful. Also, the applicants said they had a document that was signed off by the inspector on the shed. I don't see that in the packet here.
I have a copy, well, actually,
May
I
I
have
see
the
it, please?
original.
May I see it?
And while they're doing that, I just want to time check on an agreement with my colleagues that if need be, we will finish the 2 variances this evening and anything else can be put forth on the next agenda. If there's any objections?
There is no objection.
Okay. So there's no objection? So it's already almost, I think, 10. I'm looking at my computer, that's 5.
To continue on further.
10:15. It's 10:15.
It's 10:15. If there's no objection to everybody in
These agenda items that we're going to move over to June doesn't count against us, because as I have been told, you're only allowed to put 2 items on the agenda. I have other
it's the
stuff that's
same,
gonna come.
it's the same for me as well, sir.
And I have problems. I have
If
a
we
couple
need,
items I have a couple items for June's agenda.
well, we don't have a choice because at this point it's 10:17 at night.
If those are holdover items, I wouldn't consider them part of the policy.
Okay.
I would consider them holdover.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on to variance 918 Northeast 119th Street for solar panels in the front of the house.
Before we get started on this, I need to make a comment because what I understand, and this is somewhat similar to the last case, is that there is no provision in the Village of Biscayne Park Code for solar panels. So my concern is that I can look at your code and see there's no provision for it, and then I have no understanding how we move forward with a variance to something that is, because it's not allowed, is by default prohibited. You cannot get a variance to a prohibited item. Therefore, it is, I'm going to give, but the applicant speak to that, but it's my recommendation that we go ahead and also continue this item so we can research how these play together, because the truth of the matter is, if it's not allowed and there is no default anywhere else and it's prohibited, by virtue of it not being allowed, it's prohibited, then you by default would not be able to take an action on his solar panels that he is requesting, regardless of the location, because it's my understanding this is a locational question, and it sounds as if we've gone beyond it being not a locational question, but almost a use question.
If I may.
And that's the concern I have after I've listened to some of this conversation.
If I may. We have about 40 or 50 years of precedent regarding solar panels in Biscayne Park. The Code Review Board, 7 years ago, I was on the Code Review Board. There's a bunch of people here that were on the Code Review Board. We spent 7 years redoing the codes. One of the items was to include were you on the Code Review Board? You were on the Code Review Board. You were in the Code Review Board? You were on the Code Review Board. We have a whole book of redone codes that no one ever looks at. We spent 7 years on the project. So anyway, but we have about 50 years of solar panels going in Biscayne Park. They've gone through permits. In the 15 years or 18 years that I've been here, we've approved maybe like 8 or 9 houses with solar panels with a precedent in how it's done.
Well, can I ask a question?
We call them common law solar panels.
Okay.
I'm a common law resident of Biscayne Village of Biscayne Park at this point, but what I guess my question is, and when I first reviewed this was the concern that I had was, what are we varying from? What is the code section we're varying from to allow them to?
Why don't you let me make my presentation, and then you can ask.
May I, if you look on what I handed, on section 1.4.1, under general intent to foster the preserve, and help me out because I believe that this is what was said during the meeting at one point. To foster, preserve public health, safety, comfort, and welfare, to aid in the harmonious, orderly, and aesthetic, pleasing, and social beneficial development of the village in accordance with the comp plan. I don't know if that's the correct code, but I know there's a harmonious piece, and that's what they keep quoting. Okay.
I hate to interrupt you. In order to
grant a variance, you have to have a code provision that actually is applicable that you can't comply with.
Okay.
And those are the standards upon which your variance is being reviewed by. I'm not giving, I can't give you an answer right now because I was under the understanding that it was the way your code worked, and it was a conversation that we had 2 months ago, and in fact I looked at it and I agreed with it, was that there's a default position, and with that I understand that Miami-Dade and other jurisdictions that you have looked at in their building codes do have, actually Miami-Dade County in the building code does have a provision for solar panels, therefore, and that there are provisions also within their zoning code, therefore it's an allowable use, and then what you're doing is saying, well, can you have it in another location other than the back? I just, if y'all want to move forward, that's fine. But be aware that if I look at this and I determine that that's now a prohibited use, this could be a great exercise, but my opinion is not going to be any different for this than it's going to be for any other use that isn't specifically put in your code. Notwithstanding, I hear what you're saying about the precedent. We've got to treat everything similarly, and I do fear your code doesn't have a lot of things in it. It probably should, and I'd love to see the work that y'all have put together because I think it would save some time, but that's what my concern is, especially after the conversation we just had.
So, with that in mind, I'm inclined to wait till we have a ruling on this before we move forward, just so we don't waste council's time. At the same time, Dr. Jonas has been waiting a very long time to have this say, and I have no problem with having him.
Now, the other option too is go ahead and we can go ahead and do the entire presentation, and just with the recognition, similar to what I said, if I find that there's no legal problem granting or denying the variance, regardless, I guess if you deny it, it really isn't relevant, but if it's approval and we find there's an issue, we're going to have to deal with that issue. I don't know how we'll deal with it, but we'll figure it out.
Can we do it a conditional approval based upon legal?
I wouldn't want to characterize it as that, but if there is no legal basis for the approval, it does create an ability for that approval to be pulled under the state of the law. But I just want to make that caveat. So the question is, do you want to hear it now? I researched this and find out we shouldn't have gone for it, or you continue and let me opine on that and deal with it later. That is my legal opinion. That is not a procedural requirement.
Okay, council members?
There actually was from the data meeting April 1st, 2019, when the P&Z board denied the application. They pointed to section 10.3.2 sub C, which talks about no air conditioning or other ductwork shall be visible on any roof from ground level. That's what the denial was based on. This is not air conditioning, heating. This is not ductwork. So based on what the denial is, I don't see how. I think a variance should be granted, because based just solely on what from what P&Z is stating their reason for denial.
Well, I think that's part of the analysis is whether or not it's similarly situated enough to that provision of the code that you can actually vary from it.
I think we're getting and this has been a historical issue, I would say, with Biscayne Park, is the fact that oftentimes we haven't been very clear in some of our codes, and interpretations can change over the years. And in order to get away from that, I think we're going to have to button down these codes and get things really kind of ironed out.
No doubt on that.
To deny it based on this one section here, it's...
But I did listen to the tapes, and it was denied on 2 counts. One was harmonious with the neighborhood.
Well, I'm just going off
and we've also
in the written
right.
documents.
Yeah, I happened to listen to the tape because I read the same thing, and I'm like, it's not air conditioning ductwork. I think the intent is mechanical. Then I went on Florida Building Code and found out solar panels do fall into a mechanical category, but it's not ductwork. I'm sorry, but it's not. So it's not ductwork. There's no ductwork in solar panels. So that part is not the issue. The issue I had was having them in the front of the house is something we haven't permitted. And if, Mr. Ollis, if you could come forward on that first. We've never permitted solar panels, to my knowledge, in the front of a house.
By practice, we've never approved it in the front. Actually, the neighbor directly to the east a year ago, 2 years ago, applied for solar panels in the front. We denied, and she probably had them moved into the back. But are we going to continue the whole? I mean, do we want to go over the whole thing?
It's up to the applicant at this point.
You guys need to give the direction direction if we're going
Right.
to go through the whole thing or not.
It's
Okay.
up to the applicant to decide how he wants to proceed.
Dr. Jonas,
So I can make my presentation?
that's up to you. If you'd like to do this,
Yeah,
you may.
that's what I'm here
Okay,
for.
go ahead.
That's what I want to do. So, unfortunately, you all have had a number of parts of the discussion without having the presentation, so it's been a little bit disorganized. The issue here is solar panels in front of the house. Let me say at the outset that I agree with Will Tudor. I appreciate that he's a rules guy, and I am too. And sometimes rules fail to take something into account, or they're too ambiguous, and that's the purpose of variances. So having and following rules and having variances are not opposite of each other. They work together. So the issue for us is that our rule about this, which is the code, says that mechanical features cannot be mounted on roofs so that they can be seen from the street. That's what the code says. And mechanical features are generally illustrated as being things like ductwork and roof-mounted air conditioning. The problem is, and Will, you also correctly pointed this out, that we have an inclusive code, and in theory, anything that's not mentioned in the code, by definition, is not allowed. Solar panels are not mentioned in our code. However, as Andrew pointed out, we do have a precedent in Biscayne Park. We have lots of solar panels. We have already allowed them. And there's an overriding state law that says that no municipality can prohibit the existence of solar panels. So even if we specifically tried to prohibit them, instead of indirectly doing that by not mentioning them, we really couldn't do it. So the reason that planning and zoning did not approve my permit application or support the variance is based on their interpretation of the code, and there are two problems. One is a technical problem, and the other is a code problem. The technical problem is this. It doesn't matter where ductwork or a roof-mounted air conditioner is on a roof. They function the same whether you can see them or you can't see them. That's not true of solar panels. It makes all the difference in the world where they are, and they have to be aimed toward the sun. That's the purpose of them. Just to point out to you all, which I'm sure you know, my house is on the south side of 119th Street, so the front of the house faces north. As you also know, all of us have our biggest electrical expense in the summer because of air conditioning. And the fact is that the sun is north of us most of the day in the summer. So what I wanted to arrange with the contractor is an array of panels, 21 of them, most of which would be either south-facing, which you wouldn't see from the street, or side-facing, which you also wouldn't see from the street, but some of them would be north-facing in order to take advantage of the fact that that's where the sun is in the summer. So the technical problem is that it's wrong to say that solar panels can be treated like ductwork or roof-mounted air conditioning, because they can't. The code problem is that the least we could do is be consistent. And I will also tell you that the state statute that prevents us from preventing anyone from having solar panels, on the other hand, says you don't have to be able to have them anywhere, you just have to be able to have them. So in theory, we could have a rule that says you can never see solar panels from the street, you just can't see them from the street in front of your house, for example. But we have a code interpretation problem which is that we have solar panels that you can see from the street, and they were approved in recent years, some of them. There's a photograph behind you. That's not the first one I wanted you to see because it's not Biscayne Park, it's El Portal. There's a house in El Portal that has a large array of solar panels, and as far as I know, they're all visible from the street in front of the house because the house is on the north side of the street, and it's traditional that solar panels in the northern hemisphere would be positioned to face south. And I will also tell you, just to take a little tangent, I will tell you that the contractor I'm using has encouraged me to have the solar panels facing south. And they've given me two reasons that I should do that. One is that even though the sun is north of us, therefore facing the front of my house in the summer, on the other hand, the sun is south of us most of the days of the year, and I can collect solar power all winter, and it'll go into the grid, and I'll get some money credit from FP&L. I don't want money credit from FP&L in the winter. They buy power for a lot less than they sell it for, and I want it when I need it, which is in the summer. The other thing my contractor suggested to me, because I have a shade problem behind my house, is I should just cut down some of the trees. And I told them, this is Biscayne Park. We don't cut down trees so we can clear an area for solar panels. That's not how it works here. So that's just one example of what it looks like when you have a bunch of panels in front of your house, and that's El Portal. But Roseanne, can you get one of the other photographs? That's the same house. That, is there a way to enlarge it?
Yeah, on the left-hand side is a little button. Left-hand side button.
Little magnifying glass, bottom row.
In front of the red thing. Point to it.
Let me see which house that is.
Go left, no.
Okay, what I'm showing you here is not the one-story house in front, but the two-story house behind. This photograph is taken from 118th Street. It's taken of a house, the street address of which is on 119th Street, but the solar panels are visible from the street behind. They're visible from 118th Street, which in theory is related to what we say we don't want, which is seeing solar panels from the street. Can you get one of the other photographs? This is 117th Street. This house has its address it's on the north side of the street, so it's facing south. It has one solar panel, which faces the street. You can see it. You can also see just at the top of the roof, just behind, a little piece of metal. That is a water tank. The purpose of that one solar panel is to heat water that goes into that tank, and that's how that house gets hot water. My point, though, is this is a solar panel that you can see from the street in front of the house. Do you have the other picture? That's the El Portal one. Is there another picture? Okay. This house, the one on the right, is on 6th Avenue, and it's facing east. The piece of roof you can see sloping down from right to left is facing south, and you can see the solar panels. It's a little hard because the picture is small, but the point is that from the front of the house, which is 6th Avenue, you can see the solar panels. So what I'm saying to you is, if in reality we allow solar panels, regardless of what the code says, and if in reality we allow them to be seen from the street, including the street in front of the house, therefore, that's what I want. And I've given you the reason, because I want to get as much solar energy as I can get, especially in the summer. I don't want to lose that. because I'm on the south side of the street. And the worst thing anybody could say about this is they're afraid it wouldn't look nice. I showed you the house in El Portal. It's a roof with a bunch of solar panels on it. I think it's anybody's opinion as to whether they think it looks nice. Frankly, I don't think it looks terrible. There's a picture of a roof. Actually, that's a different house. Chuck, where's that one? That's the one you took. That's Miami Shores. Okay. So that one, that has a metal roof and solar panels. That's as bad as it gets. That is the terrible tragedy we are theoretically trying to avoid. And I would like you to consider that actually it's not so bad considering the advantage of having the solar panels. So that's my argument, and that's why I'd like you to approve the variance.
Okay. Attorney, did you? No. May I?
If I might
Yeah.
talk, and again, this was, just allow me one moment, please. I was able to have Rebecca, she provided me with the state statute on this. Again, that was one of the reasons I was suggesting the continuance, because I felt there was something that I needed to look at, and I didn't obviously have all that information here. Notwithstanding that, Rebecca was able to provide me with the state statute. The state statute is very clear. You have the right to have solar panels, and no jurisdiction can prohibit them, and the only thing that a jurisdiction can do is provide regulations specifically as to where those solar panels are. You don't have any regulations related to solar panels. Therefore, utilizing a provision of the code is the variance that you have denied, notwithstanding some of the reasons why, and it's probably incredibly valid. I think we're in a position now where we are preempted from granting or denying a variance until you put something in place that provides the location that exists for solar panels. And I hate to throw this out there now. It was one of the reasons I wanted to continue this so I could research this issue, but if you take a position on this and we continue forward and it's a preempted position, I'm going to end up taking that position. So again, I don't know that I'm going to see much different. The only thing that's different from what I said before is you have nothing in your code, and typically that would mean it's prohibited, but because of the state statute, it is not only expressly allowed, you cannot prohibit it. So I would really recommend one of two things. One, we either continue this so I can look at that and provide that level of comfort that we know that this is preempted, or two, have the recognition that even if you deny this, if we are preempted, I'm going to have to void the decision. But my sense is, in looking at that state statute, we're probably preempted.
Okay. Thank you. May I ask a technical question of Mr. Just a moment, please. May I ask a technical question, Mr. Jonas, if I may? Dr. Jonas, I'm sorry. Thank you. I just have a question that makes no sense to me, so perhaps you can enlighten me. If the sun basically is 28 degrees in the summer, in the winter, which I know you don't care about because that is your issue, wouldn't the trees then prohibit even getting the southern-facing ones having sufficient sun if it's sitting at 28 degrees? And then if it comes up to 86 degrees, and by the way, for those of you wondering, I just basically got this off of the sun position in Florida from it's a University of Central Florida, Florida Solar Energy Center. So if it's going to sit up at 86 degrees in the summer, which is when you want your energy, but and I just want to know what your expert said, just out of curiosity here, because this is what was bothering me when I was reading it, not just the position, because I'm for solar energy. But if this is the north-facing wall here, and the sun is coming at 86 degrees this way, and your panels are facing flat this way, you're not going to get the advantage of those solar panels. So I'm curious what your expert said and what they recommended.
I'm not entirely sure I understand your question, but I will tell you that sort of the informal pointing and bending you did there is not consistent with reality in the summer.
It is according to, I'm sorry, but I'll submit this, the sun's position in Florida, according to the Florida Solar Energy Center, 86 degrees. I just don't understand why you would want panels that are not going to get sufficient energy in the front of your, let me just finish and then you can comment all the way. You're not going to get sufficient energy because they're facing the wrong way. They're facing this way when the sun's coming in this way. It doesn't make any sense. So I was just curious what your expert had recommended to you.
If you look at the backup for this issue, and some of it was was put into the backup out of order. Some pages of the backup are where they're not supposed to be, but there was one schematic of the path of the sun, and what you will see is that early in the day until about 11 o'clock in the morning, the sun is distinctly north of us. At the end of the day, after about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun again is distinctly north of us. For that piece of time in between, from about 11 until about 2 or 3, the sun is more or less directly overhead. In the summer, the sun is never much south of us. The most south it gets is about overhead in the summer. And that's when I want to pick up as much solar energy as I can.
I don't mean to be technically disagreeable on this, but the sun faces, if it's coming from the south at 86 degrees, you're 4 degrees before you're overhead, even at high noon. But the panels on the roof are going to be slanting the wrong way. So
No.
when the sun hits, and then the other issue I'd have is why not trim the trees and put them all in the back? If that was was that the request of the?
Well, I didn't even say my.
No, they didn't
Okay,
request
we'll get you a spirit. Okay.
Well, I will say the same thing to you that I said to the contractor. No, this is Biscayne Park. We don't cut down or cut back trees for solar panels. We like trees. We like them as much as we can get them. That's sort of part of our point. In fact, if we were to have a brand, that would probably be it.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Is there anything else you want to add? I'm sorry.
The position of the board was, and
Do you mind speaking in the mic for me, please?
I'll be really
Thank you.
brief because it's getting really late. Dr. Jonas did bring the contractor, and the contractor, we have architects and GCs, and I've done homes with solar panels myself, and we're all very familiar with it. In speaking to the solar contractor, he agreed with us that it's all the panels should be in the north or in the south or in the west. Looking at the roof diagram, there is room in the back of his house where we could even tilt panels, which couldn't be seen from anywhere. You could tilt the panels to catch even more of the light from other areas. And it was pretty much, and it's in the record that it's pretty much a personal preference of Dr. Jonas that he wanted it in the front. The big thing for us was the harmonious. It's not harmonious. We don't allow it in the front. We denied it several times. I mean, one time for sure. I think there was another one along the way that was denied in the front, and they moved it. They moved it and did whatever they had to do. So.
And how many panels? Was there 9 panels in the front? Because when I saw the thing, I think it was 9 panels in the front. So there's, right. So there's, if I'm doing my math correctly, 9 over 20 is about 42, 43% of the panels in the front. Okay. Thank you.
So that was a position of the board.
Okay.
It was unanimously denied.
On the harmonious basis as well as the other one, correct? Okay. Thank you.
And just before you finish with this, let me point out to you that the least we could expect in terms of something like being harmonious is that we have consistency. If we want to argue that solar panels should not be visible from the street, the least we can do is make it so that that's true. It is not. It's not true in Biscayne Park. So it's some sort of a fantasy that we just don't do it that way. I will also tell you that when I walk for exercise, I walk in the morning. In the summer, I have to walk on the south side of the street because I need the shade from the trees because the sun is coming very much from the north. And that's true toward the end of the day, too. It just is.
I'm not going to argue in the solar part. It's the only thing I don't agree with you scientifically. It's at 86 degrees, which does not make any sense to me. I'm sorry. But that's the only part I don't have disagreement on. But that's irrelevant to your variance. I'm sorry, did you have something to add before we open testimony?
No, the only thing when it was also discussed with Dr. Jonas that because he was speaking about the other homes where solar panels are visible from the back or whatever, the difference is those are like maybe 80 feet, 100 feet, 150 feet from the street if it's a second floor. This is 30 feet from the street. It's, you know, the front of the house is 30 feet from the street. It's right there, just like this.
And was it unanimous on the board? Was there anybody who had?
Unanimous.
Okay, thank you. We are really running out of time, so I have no problem with public comments, but if you could keep them as brief as you could, I would really appreciate it, and support, so forth.
You know what? Go up, Barbara.
Shouldn't have this many people on
Yeah, because I need
Barbara Kuehl, 111th Street. There is a new Florida statute that says you cannot deny solar, and one of the criteria is that it's the south. They want the south facing, and I realize this is a little bit different with Fred because he has the north facing. But my point is, solar is coming, and you're not going to be allowed to stop people from doing this. Half of the houses are facing the other way. So my house faces south, so that means I would be, and my back is very shady. So that means anybody with a south-facing house wouldn't be allowed to have solar. I don't think the code's going to hold up that way. I think we need to change. I mean, it's half and half. You can't all be on the right side. So, and houses that are east-west, you're going to see it. And it's just like metal roofs. Everybody thought they were going to be so ugly, they were going to ruin the neighborhood. I was one of them. I didn't like the idea a long time ago. They've improved them. They look better. I'm used to them. And it's something this village should be jumping on board with other cities like South Miami, West Palm Beach, and the state, and start encouraging solar and change our codes to make it easier. West Palm Beach has an expediting process, so you don't have to go through all the rigmarole. They want this done quickly, and they have goals for the village, for the city, to have more people going onto solar. So maybe we're not exactly there yet because so many people haven't wanted to do this, but it's coming. So
thank you.
I would give them the variance.
Thank you so much.
Chuck Ross, 11166 Griffin Boulevard. I just want to point out the statute's 163.04. I kind of gave Anastasia the heads up. I guess she telegraphed the attorney. Energy devices based on renewable resources, and it's pretty specific. We can't prohibit it. And that's what I was saying earlier when I was referring to what Commissioner Tudor said. We are an inclusive code, and he thought maybe we could fall back on Miami-Dade County, and we should fix the codes. But there are certain things, even though we're inclusive, we can't stop.
It's preempted.
Okay.
The attorney said that's quite a possibility.
I'm just confirming, and I'm agreeing with everything that Barbara just said, and Fred. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Carl Marcus. I'm with Golden Solar, 1438 Northeast, 104th Street, Miami Shores, Florida, and we're the contractor installing for Mr. Jonas. And I just want to basically second, I believe, Barbara's viewpoint that if that there are going to be many houses in Biscayne Park that they're going to have south-facing roof lines that are going to be optimal for solar. So if there's no if there's nothing on the books, then or all those homes are prevented from solar, that would be a real shame. I mean, so because that's where optimal location for solar panels should be, on south facing. So that's an important point. And secondly, I believe Coral Gables is running into some legal difficulties because they have a ordinance on the books that prevents solar panels from being visible
from the front.
on the street. And I believe there's some. Finally, residents are got together and are proceeding with some legal issues. So, using the Florida statute as part of that legal basis. So that's all I wanted to mention. Thank you.
So, and out of curiosity, your recommendation is on the south side of the face. South facing is the most optimal.
Generally, south facing is optimal. In Mr. Jonas's case, there is shading in the south facing with a beautiful oak tree, and there is that balance you want to strike between, because trees do provide shading and do cool the property. So there is a balance that we try to find. So in our design, we have put panels on the south facing roof where there is still sufficient sunshine, but to reach the level of of power production that Mr. Jonas is interested in, we have to put some on the north side. And
That's one of the questions I had, is the power, that is one of the questions. How much power is, because 21 panels, it seems like a lot of panels.
actually,
So-
it's not that many panels. The average size of a solar power installation in Florida is almost 36 panels. So this is
Per what square footage?
per a average. We do it typically by FPL bill. So an average FPL bill here for Florida is about $185 per month, and that requires roughly 36 panels.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Any other questions?
One more comment.
Oh, one more comment. Yes, sir.
MacDonald, 4,000 emails, Kennedy, 11705 Northeast 11th Place. No one here is suggesting that Biscayne Park should not allow these things, so I think some people are just misquoting things. Another thing that people are getting wrong here is that our code does not say they should not be visible from the street or the front street. It says will not be visible on any roof from ground level. It doesn't say from the street, and it doesn't say from the front street. It says not visible from ground level. And the fact remains that Dr. Jonas showed you some homes in Biscayne Park that have them on the front of the homes. Andrew's going to tell you that they were grandfathered in before they started doing this or something. But here's the other thing that you need to keep in mind. The 2-story house that Dr. Jonas is showing you is 1 block from his home. I walk down that street nearly every morning on my morning walk. Those solar panels are clearly visible from the street. I walk by and look at them every day and go, well, why are they allowed up there if they're not going to let Dr. Jonas have his solar panels visible from the street? P&Z, Dan, throw my husband under the bus, and Andrew, approved these things. So they approved a 2-story house 1 block from Fred's home to have solar panels way up in the air, visible from 2 blocks away. Come on, guys. You can't allow one property to do that and then tell Dr. Jonas he can't do it. It's just silly.
Okay, thank you.
It's really silly.
Okay, with the commission's permission, rather than vote on this at advice of council, how would you like us to proceed?
I think we have enough grounds to vote on it now.
This is what I've said now a couple times. My concern is to take an action here, and either I determine, and I think I'm more inclined to determine at this point we're completely preempted than I am that we are completely prohibited given the state statute. So you could make a decision here, and I'm going to have to, as a matter of law, tell you that you had no opportunity to review this variance. So you could either, but the problem is the applicant has the right to be heard on their application. So either they can continue it, or we have to take an action given the evidence that's in front of you.
Can we vote, can we have a motion to continue? Can we make that determination, or the applicant? The applicant.
Application heard, and so you can't unilaterally continue it. He has asked not to continue it, so you can take a vote. I will tell you, I'm not comfortable completely giving you a legal opinion on the preemption issue. I haven't looked at it, and I don't have enough information. I see that the statute went in place in 2008, but I'm looking at a statute without understanding how it was implemented and all of those other things. So I would have preferred a continuance, but the applicant has chosen not to. He has the right to have it heard. So I can't. Whatever you do it on the basis of the evidence that's presented. You have a recommendation from your P&Z board to deny it, and so you live with that.
I don't want to be disrespectful about this, but didn't you see the agenda for this meeting?
Okay, Dr. Jonas, with all due respect.
Excuse me.
I
did the best. Excuse me. I did the best I could to review the agenda as it was.
This has been on it
But,
for the whole time of the agenda.
Did you raise the issue in your previous proceeding about the preemption? Did you raise the opinion, the issue with the legal, with the attorneys about the preemption issue? You moved forward through a variance process, and if you wanted to raise that issue, you also had the right to do it. I'm highly likely going to say that the village is preempted, so I don't really know why you're having such a tough time with my opinion. I'm doing the best I can with the information that I have.
Mr.
So, as I said, you have every right to have this variance determined. If I ultimately determine that it's preempted, then I will advise the village to deal with it that way. So I'm not really sure I'm understanding what the problem is.
This is on the agenda. There's backup. If there was any question in your mind, you had a chance to research it before this meeting.
Sir, I understand everything you're saying. I think at this point it is a late hour. I think we've all had a long night. I want you to know that you have an absolute right to be heard on this issue.
Great.
You have an absolute right to continue the issue, regardless of what the village does in terms of this decision. I'm going to look at the issue, and if I determine that it's preempted, I'm going to determine that it's preempted and advise accordingly. I cannot feel comfortable with us making a decision that is a preempted decision, regardless if we've made it or haven't made it yet. That's what I'm trying to say.
So let me ask you this. If you decide that it's preempted, will you then recommend that the village tell the people who have solar panels on their homes in Biscayne Park that they have to remove them?
Oh, I think maybe you're misunderstanding.
You're upset. You're backwards, Dr. Jonas.
Preempted means that the state law prevails and the village wouldn't have the right to regulate the solar panels at all. Maybe that's where the misunderstanding is. That's what preemption means. The state law prevails.
Okay.
Meaning the village could not have requested you to have, or you did not need to go through a variance procedure. You would have had the right to put them on your structure, on your home, without the variance.
That's what preempt means.
Misunderstanding the preemption issue.
Well, we have a number of factors here. There certainly are rules, and there are exceptions, and we also have precedent. And we've said it.
Well, if the state law prevails and we don't have the right to regulate
where you put your panels.
The state law says that the municipality does have a right to regulate where I put them. It can't prevent me from having them, but it can regulate where I put them. But we have a precedent. We allow that they are put in a place where you can see them from the street, and at least 2 of the houses that have that are relatively recent houses that were approved by most of the same planning and zoning board that didn't approve my application.
I hear everything you're saying.
Okay.
I would like to be able to advise in the most appropriate way, but you have every right to have this heard tonight. So please move forward.
And that's what I want.
Okay, I have one question. Did Dr. Jonas, did anybody ask you, because you have 9 panels, which is 42% of the house, has anybody asked you to, or did any of the board members even discuss with you possibly putting less on the front and putting more on the back and the sides?
No, their position was that none should be on the front.
Okay, thank you.
Right?
No. We said none in the front, but just move them to the back and have them tilted. Yeah. Okay. But her question was, did they ask you to move,
To have fewer than 9.
Fewer than 9?
The answer is
no.
It had to be 0.
But move them to the back.
I have, irregardless of the state law, I have one question as well. One of the statements that was made in the tape was that when asked about number 2, the necessity for preservation and enjoyment of the substantial petitioner, Dr. Jonas, you said, no, I can do that without any solar panels, just pay the electric. My issue on this whole variance is, 1, it's a mess from state law. 2, I support solar power, but what I'm having an issue in is there doesn't seem to be a compromise in trying to make it less aesthetic to your neighbors. Did any of your neighbors, did you have any letters at all from your neighbors saying that they don't care? Did you produce any letters at all from them saying that they don't care about it?
I didn't ask them, but the village, in anticipation of this, part of the variance procedure is that the village sends mail to all of my neighbors to tell them about this. So I guess I would turn the question around and ask you, did any of my neighbors say they don't like this idea?
I only got 1 letter. That was it. And it wasn't your direct, and
neighbors?
it wasn't a direct neighbor. No.
Oh, okay.
It was around the block.
So apparently nobody's complaining.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay. Any other closing statements? Okay.
Next one's easy.
Okay. So we have to take a vote on this because we're being asked to do so.
You want to do closing comments?
Closing comments on anybody?
Commissioners on this?
Commissioners?
No. Yeah. Well, I'll be glad to give a quick little comment. My stance on this, I think I've kind of made it quite clear, is that I think this should have been approved at the P&Z level. There the way the code that was referenced for the denial talks about visibility from ground level, and I rode through the park, and there is that house on 6th Avenue. You ride down 6th Avenue. It's not on the front of the property, but it's visible from ground level. There's a property that actually, I believe it's over on 115th, that you can see solar panels from Village Hall. And there's a couple other properties that I saw the same thing. So I think what we're trying to hang or what P&Z was trying to hang their hat on, I don't think they could. So, I mean, I don't see how we could deny his ability to put in these solar panels.
Ellen, go ahead.
I'm hesitant to grant a variance when we don't have a standard to vary from, so.
I'm having the same problem. I think you mentioned 30 feet versus 100 feet. My issue is not whether or not you can see them. The question is the distance you're seeing them and how frequent. And, you know, I'm torn because, honestly, I'm absolutely, we have to move towards getting rid of fossil fuels and moving towards solar energy. So I'm torn on this because I don't want to go against what P&Z had recommended and what they've been consistently doing. At the same time, I don't want to not have solar panels. The other thing I'm torn on is I don't think having the panels on the north side of the house is going to be useful. So that's the other issue that I have.
I think the amount of time and energy that we put into discussing the swale and the drainage and pervious versus impervious, I think solar merits at very least the same amount of discussion. So I think it's a premature decision and we need more concrete standards in the village. Solar is coming, absolutely. But just because there are already residences with existing panels that can be seen from the street doesn't mean we just keep doing it. Just like we don't let people keep building sheds that you can see from the street. Right, if that were the case, then these people came in with letters, they probably would plant a bush, but we're not letting that happen either. So I think if we're going to be holding up standards and being stringent across the board, then we need to have those standards and be stringent across the board. We shouldn't start granting variances when we don't have a baseline to move from.
Thank you. Commissioner Samaria? Excuse me, respectfully, okay?
And I'm sorry, and if I could just continue, I absolutely think anyone should have the right to have solar panels, but the state law does say we have the right to regulate where they're placed, and until we've had a robust discussion around the harmonious aspects of our code and how placement would or would not correspond with that, I think the conversation is premature.
Can I make a quick recommendation?
I'm sorry?
Look at if you could review the section that we've already done all those years ago in the code review board. It's already in writing. It's already been checked legal, and it's all done. You could just take it and review it.
And if you could make sure we have a copy of that shortly, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, with that, we need to take a vote. Okay. There are 4 circumstances to grant a variance. They were already read earlier, so we don't have to reread them. In order to do the variance, correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney, they have to make all 4. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Attorney Mandel, sorry, you have to meet all 4, correct?
Yes. Well, no, you need to have either a showing of all 4 or that they fail to show all 4.
Fail to show all 4. Okay. My issue then is with the special circumstances depriving use of land. I just don't, scientifically, it makes no sense to have them on the north side of the house. So for me, they failed on that. Preserving the enjoyment, Dr. Jonas himself during one of the P&Z meetings said, no, I can do that without solar panels. I can just pay my electric bill. So as far as the granting detrimental use to public welfare, I honestly don't think solar panels are detrimental to public welfare, so I would not argue with 3. And the minimum variance is one of the reasons I asked. One of the things we could consider here is asking him to put fewer panels and put them in the back, unless we're preempted by the state, in which case that wouldn't be the case. So my argument as well would be to put as many in the back as he could and on the west side, instead of putting them in the front. And then I wouldn't have an issue. Sorry, my door is ringing. That is my wife walking the dog. Sorry. Okay. So that's my issues. Commissioner Samaria, do you have anything you want to add? Longest meeting in history.
What you said, Attorney, there's chances if we vote against this, it can turn around and can come back and bite us. So my problem is...
Clear. I want to clarify that. If your vote turns out after I researched this to be void because I determined that let me even step back a little bit further, and I don't want to take much more time, but I want to make this record very clear. The way the state law reads is All local governments are prohibiting solar panels.
Which we're not doing.
You have the right to regulate the location. The problem with your code is you don't specifically regulate the location of solar panels. I need to look at that, and I've asked to look at it a little further to determine whether or not that's enough to be a preemption or not. But and that's for the applicant to decide. The applicant is asked to go forward, so you keep this record and look at this record the way it's brought to you, notwithstanding that legal opinion. That being said, if I go back and I research this and I determine that this entire process was preempted, it is my legal obligation to let you know that. So that is my intent.
Okay, thank you. With that, it's very late. It's 11:06. So with that, let's go ahead and decide whether or not to grant or not grant the variance. We do that by roll call, or?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Tripman,
Based upon 1 and 2, no.
Commissioner William Tudor.
Based on the 4 prongs here, I would vote to grant the variance.
Commissioner Samaria,
Yes.
Commissioner Wise,
Based on it not meeting the 4 prongs, no.
We are at a 2-2.
2-2.
Because you have a tie vote, it needs to roll over for a vote to your next meeting.
Okay, so it's a rollover to vote to next meeting. Thank you. All right, thank you for all your patience and for waiting so long. We have one last variance. I believe that's a very short variance, so would you go ahead and the petitioner can also be here if they're here to sign. We'll go ahead and do that. And get that done.
Can I go ahead?
Go ahead.
Very simple. It's a sign for the Church of the Resurrection.
Excuse me. The meeting is not over. If you have a conversation, please take it outside. The meeting is not over. Thank you.
It's a new sign for the Church of the Resurrection. It's going to be almost identical to the other one. It's the same basic square footage, it's just new. The other one is, of course, old, dilapidated. They came to us before with a different sign that we didn't approve. They're literally replicating the sign. It'll just be fresh, new, same size, same dimension, backlit the same way it used to be. It's the same thing, just new.
So just upgraded? Okay. Is the petitioner here is the petitioner here at all?
No.
No. Is that a problem, attorney? No. Tell me.
If they chose not to attend and not, the evidence that you have on the record is enough for you to base your decision.
Okay.
We gave 100%, all the board.
It was 100% approval for it? Okay. Is there any comments on this particular one?
No, I looked at it. The second sign looks much better than
The first sign, right.
and it's, if I'm correct, it's all one piece. The other
Yes, the other one is a 2-level. This is all going to be one.
Yeah.
I don't
But
have
it
a
takes
problem.
up the same amount of square footage, let's say.
That's the only concern I have.
Yeah.
It does.
Okay, so if there's no comments or questions, we'll go ahead and take a vote on this variance. That was an easy one. Roll call. Madam Clerk.
Mayor Tripman,
Yes.
Commissioner Tudor,
Yes.
Commissioner Wise,
Yes.
Commissioner Samaria,
Yes.
Passes 4-0. We're going to go ahead and continue item number 12A as well as 12D. Village Attorney, if you could briefly, if there's anything you want to add.
No, I don't have anything additional to report on this one.
Okay. Village Manager, anything to add? Okay. Board Committee reports, none. Closing comments, Commissioners, any?
Yes. Real quick, I think actually I know we're going to talk about 12D at the next commission meeting, but I think we need to sit down and decide on a date to have a communication workshop to discuss communication with residents. We didn't really get to that at the last workshop. Also, I seem to say this at every meeting. I really think that when we come here, we're going to have different views, different opinions. We must be civil. That's the only way we're going to move this village forward. So I'm hoping that people on both sides, somehow I always seem to be in the middle, people on both sides, I hope that we can come together and actually, at the next commission meetings and going forward, actually have a civil meeting.
I take only one comment to that is, we have tried very hard, I know I have, to be completely civil on all accords, and so I don't like the idea of this somehow being a two-sided thing.
It is
I think
a two-sided thing.
I don't agree with you on that, sir, and that's where you and I are going to disagree. Thank you, that's my final comment.
disagree on that one.
Anything else?
I would like to move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Oh, we have announcements. I'm sorry. Can you make those announcements really fast, please?
Public Art Advisory Board, Wednesday, May 8, 2019, 6 p.m. Planning and Zoning Board, Thursday, May 9, 2019, 6:30 p.m. Code Compliance Board, Monday, May 13, 2019, 7 p.m. Biscayne Park Foundation, Monday, May 13, 2019, 7 p.m. Parks and Parkway Advisory Board, Thursday, May 16, 2019, 7 p.m. Public Safety Advisory Board, Wednesday, May 22nd, 2019, 6:30 p.m. Planning and Zoning Board, Monday, June 3rd, 2019, 6:30 p.m. Our next regular commission meeting will be held on Tuesday, June 4th, 2019, 7 p.m. And a hurricane preparedness meeting on Saturday, May 11, 2019, 11:30 a.m. at Ed Burke Recreation Center. And our village departments will be closed Monday, May 27, 2019 for Memorial Day.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second?
Second.
Meeting adjourned.
Childcare is freaking out.
You're welcome.
I know we have to talk.